Happy Tuesday! Welcome, everybody, to the Sean O'Connell Show. We got a fun one lined up for you today. Kyle Whittingham is going to join me in 15 minutes. You'd start their conference slate with Oklahoma State. Big road game right off the bat. Number 12 in the country versus number 14 in the country. Head coach of the Utes will join us here on the Sean O'Connell Show coming up in 15 minutes. Also checking in will be Jeff Johnson, Oklahoma State insider. We'll get his insider perspective on Mike Gundy's Cowboys. And then Jeff Schwartz, my guy Jeff Schwartz, a longtime co-host of mine, NFL veteran, to recap the NFL weekend. And what a good one we had. Fun weekend in the NFL. Capped off by a really fascinating and fun Monday Night Football game. I say fascinating and fun as long as you're not a Philadelphia Eagles fan. You probably enjoyed that. How about our guy Covey?
Hey,
Cov. 6 catches. You know how many times he'd been targeted as a professional football player prior to last night?
I learned my lesson from yesterday, so I'm going to go 3.
6 total.
Oh, okay.
He'd been targeted 6 times. He had 6 catches in the game last night. If only someone had told you that Britton Covey was going to be a more active part of the Eagles' offense and not just a special teams guy for them this year. Look, 6 catches, 23 yards. It's not like a career night by any means. Well, I suppose it is technically a career night for him right now.
In theory.
But there will be more from Britton Covey. We know how it works with this young man, right? You kind of start to just offer a little trickle. And let's put him back there at punt return and see how it works. Oh, he's the second best punt returner in the see what happens. Okay, start actually throwing him the ball. Oh, 6 catches. Cool. He's sure-handed. All right. And then one of these days, right, it'll be like week 4, week 5. They're going to get him the ball 7 times on that 7th one. He's going to whoop, 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 whoop. And he's just going to, like, Mario Brothers teleport his way into the end zone. And they're going to be like, oh, we should do that more often.
All 5'7", 5'8" of Mr. Covey. But I mean, listen, underrated his entire life, and I like his approach to everything too. I may be small, but I'm going to beat you.
He's awesome. Like, you've heard how he talks. Size can be a disadvantage if you let it, but I've found a way a long time ago to make my size an advantage for me. I can fit through gaps other guys can't fit through. I can hide behind blocks in ways that other guys can't. And, you know, that attitude has really, I think, served him well as a football player and in life. First segment here on the Sean O'Connell Show, always brought to you by Alvi Armani, alviarmani.com. If you're experiencing any kind of angst or worry about hair loss, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to worry about it anymore. This is no longer the 80s or the 90s. The technology is there. You can get it fixed. alviarmani.com. Gentlemen, ladies, whoever, don't let it thin out and become a noticeable problem. Just get it taken care of right now. alviarmani.com. By the way, my guy Alonzo always wears a ball cap. Always. And yesterday you took it off for whatever reason. I don't know, head itchy.
It's hot in here.
The weave was getting a little bit too tight. I don't know what it was, but multiple people were just like, whoa, look at the head of hair on it.
I'm not even making this up. So when I started working, doing the broadcast stuff, I went to the stadium once without a hat on. Like, I had actually combed my hair, and nobody recognized. Like, they did not let me into the building because they're like, you are not who you say you are.
You know what it looked like yesterday when you took your hat off?
What's that?
I'm sure you've experienced this, but every once in a while, you'll meet somebody's baby, and that baby just will have been born with a full salad, just a full head of hair, and it's sticking up in every direction. You're just like, whoa, that little kid has so much hair.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. You looked like a giant, extra airy baby yesterday.
I'll take that, because then that means I don't look a total of 38, so I'll take that all day.
Yeah.
I did throw Spence for a curve, because even he was like, and I've known Spence for like 5 or 6 years, and even he was like, what?
Also a man who is often hatted.
Yes.
Spence wears a lot of ball caps.
He does.
His brother's got that company. So, anyway, Kyle Whittingham in 10 minutes, but Before we get there, and maybe I'll ask Kyle Whittingham this question too. You saw something last night in Monday Night Football that can be applied to high school football, college football, basketball, whatever. You saw a situation last night where the Eagles had a chance to salt away the game with a better play call or a more – actually, I shouldn't say a better play call because Saquon Barkley was open, and if he executes and he catches it, game's probably over. Now, especially if you were paying attention to like the Manning cast, or if you went back in retrospective and listened to how the Mannings and Matt Ryan were talking about it. Maybe you're a high school coach, maybe you're a coach yourself, maybe you and your little league team are 5-0 heading into this weekend, whatever it is. There are certain things you do to play the percentages in a situation like that when it's your job now to burn clock, when you're 4-0 and you're milking a lead and you're up 6 points and you just cannot. Woo.
You all right?
You cannot give the ball back to the other team. Like, even though you might feel like your pass plays a higher percentage, you run, okay? You run, you take a delay a game, you milk as much clock as you can. If you're going to have to turn it over, if you're going to have to punt it, if you're going to have to do whatever, you just get as much off that clock as you can. Incomplete passes, as we know, stop the clock. And look, again, Saquon Barkley should have caught the pass. You look in, again, hindsight, Saquon Barkley has more drops in his career than any other running back in the league in that same time span. That's the 16th pass he has dropped. Unforced error, so to speak.
Which is crazy.
He's a great player.
Great player. But
that's the kryptonite. So all of these things add up. The clock, the play call, the fact that it was Saquon, that Saquon has drop issues, whatever. And then, of course, Kirk Cousins, who the entire game, everyone is just like, he stinks, he's washed, waste of money, waste of time, shouldn't have made this move.
Myself included in our group chat.
And, yes, you're so Alonzo was dancing on the grave of Kirk Cousins, and then Kirk Cousins, he must have hacked the chat and was just like, oh, really, Alonzo?
Do you like that?
And I don't think Kirk Cousins is ever going to win you a meaningful playoff game. I don't think that Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins has one of the best agents in the history of sports because that man is going to be walking away with half a billy by the time it's all said and done without ever having really done anything meaningful for a franchise.
We also need to retain that agent, you and I.
Yes.
Because I don't know how, bro, all-time agent right there.
Just incredible. And part of it is because of what is required now in the NFL. You have to pay a quarterback $45 to $60 million a year if you think that he's a bona fide starter. And Kirk Cousins is good enough to say, yeah, he's a bona fide starter, but is he a difference maker for your franchise? Well, last night he was. He executed that 2-minute drill absolutely perfectly, but he doesn't get an opportunity to do that if Nick Sirianni and Saquon Barkley and everyone else do their job the way that they're supposed to do their job. And it's one of those things that if you're a fan of that Eagles franchise, which I'm not, or if you're a fan of fill-in-the-blank college team or fill-in-the-blank whatever team, you're looking at it, you're going, how do you make that mistake? It's right there. The game is right there in your hands. Literally in Saquon Barkley's case, and he did a great job post-game, taking accountability for it. But it begs for me the question, Alonzo. This is professional sports, and Power 4 football and basketball are now professional sports as well, so you can throw that in there.
Right.
The most inexcusable error, the thing that you just can't get over when you see that mistake made in whatever sport. I'm talking about, I threw some ideas out there on Twitter. I didn't want to turn it into a poll because that limits your options, but missed free throws for me is one of those things where you're just like, dude. Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest, most dominant forces in any sport in the history of competitive action, never figured out the free throw shooting thing to even a serviceable level. If he had shot like 78% from the stripe for his whole career, his totals would be untouchable. But he was terrible, always. And I love Shaq, so I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. But if I'm a Laker fan or a Magic fan or he played for the Heat, he played for the
Celtics,
he played for the Cavs for
the
5 seconds.
Suns.
He played for the Suns. If I'm a fan of any of those franchises, Lakers especially, I'm looking at it and I'm going, dude, you are paid more than anybody in the league. You are respected more than anybody at your position. Find a way to hit your free throws. That, to me, is one of those things where I'm like, dude, you can't miss a free throw. You can't.
I remember during those golden years against like the Kings and such, and they do the hack-a-shack.
Well,
I was just so pissed.
There was a whole strategy established to exploit your weakness, and you still retained that weakness for the entirety of your career.
Yeah.
And that, to me, like, I don't expect everyone to make 100% of their free throws, but there's like a baseline percentage that you have to get above that in order to call yourself a professional basketball player. I mean, come on. So free throws are the one for me that I'm just like, dude, come on. A missed extra point. I understand the dynamic with field goals can get really complicated, and you got different angles, and you got different distances. Extra points, that is a set thing. You can practice those conditions every single time. You know exactly where it's going to be lined up. You get to choose where the ball is snapped. That thing should be automatic. You are professional. You are paid. You have uno job. You have one duty, and it's that. Could I make extra points reliably? No. I could not. Not reliably. But the weird thing is, like, you could probably make half.
Well, let me ask you this. But at what point, so like now, as we've seen over the last few years, there's guys that are kicking 45-plus yard attempts, right? Not extra points, just attempts.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because I feel like kickers are the burden of jokes in general as we run into, whether it's in college or at the pro level.
Yeah.
So at what point do you say, okay, you missed this 60-yard field goal, you're trash, you're washed. Is that out of line?
Out of line.
Okay.
60-yard field goal, 45-yard field goal, 38-yard field goal with the wind swirling, any of it. Because the conditions are different. It's a variable. But just like the free throw, that's not a variable, okay?
Right. Okay.
It's the same distance every time. The hoop is always 10 feet tall. There's always people standing there ready to rebound. I guess the variables would be like who's in the back, waving the sign, flipping you off, whatever, I guess. But, like, extra points, you could practice that over and over and over and over and over again. So missing free throws too much, it feels inexcusable when you're a highly compensated professional athlete.
So as a running back, when your primary job is to run the ball down the throat of your opponent, is the expectation that you should also run and catch?
Well, yes, at the NFL level it is.
Okay.
Look, Saquon dropping that doesn't feel overly inexcusable to me. I think the better argument is like, dude, as a coach, you have to know all of the permutations. You have to know all of the variables here. You have to know the clock management situation like the back of your hand. Clock mismanagement in basketball and in football at the highest levels,
fireable, in my opinion.
Inexcusable. Get rid of it. Hire a guy, put him on your staff, make that his whole job.
Well, it's like how Sean McVay has that guy that just catches him by the shirt. You should have a guy that just watches the clock.
the get back coach?
Yeah, the get back coach.
The guy that pulls him back? All right. Kyle Whittingham's going to join us here in like 30 seconds. We're going to get him on the show. If I have time, I'll ask him this. Coach Whitt has a ton of media obligations today, so we're going to be really, really careful about his time on the Sean O'Connell Show. But that's something. Keep him coming in at Real OC Sports, 877-353-0700. The inexcusable errors you see in pro sports and in high-level college sports, because those are pro sports now. Clock management coming in on the tweets. How about this one from Bryson Green? Getting runners on second or third with no outs and not being able to score any runs. Runners stranded, that's a bad deal in baseball. Players taking off their helmet to celebrate. Yeah, dude. If you're a little leaguer and you just, like, score your first lifetime touchdown and you're going insane, sure, take your helmet off and celebrate. but at the highest levels, that's inexcusable. You got to know. We'll get back into this conversation right now. Time to talk with the head coach of your University of Utah Utes, Kyle Whittingham, kind enough to join me again on the Sean O'Connell Show. Coach, how are you?
Doing good, OC. How you doing?
Doing all right. We're going to stay focused mostly on Oklahoma State, but I do want to look back at least once with the Isaac Wilson performance up there in Logan. It was, I think, encouraging for all Utah football fans, for the long-term future, for the short-term, knowing that guy's your backup. How'd he grade out when you've taken a chance to look at the film several times? You know, your final thoughts on his performance.
Well, very good. Big step in the right direction. He was efficient. Missed a few throws, but that's to be expected. He was still over 60% completion percentage, and so that was a step forward. Thought once he got settled in and got into a groove, he really looked comfortable and confident out there, and did a good job for us. And so it was definitely encouraging, as you said.
Was anything unique said or done or decided at halftime that helped him get in the rhythm and get in the groove? Because it felt like the second half was a totally different animal for him.
Well, I didn't hear the conversation between him and Coach Ludwig. I was in with the defense at that point in time, but I know that I told him at halftime he's doing a great job and keep it up, and just to continue to play with confidence and let it rip, and that's exactly what he did.
All right, let's talk about conference play, getting started as a new member of the Big 12 Conference and doing so with a pretty big game, a pretty tough contest. Stillwater, a notorious arena, tough place to play, and this Oklahoma State team ranked just a couple spots behind your squad and looks pretty solid. What are you seeing from them on film?
Yeah, it looks like a good matchup from what I can discern from watching tape. A lot of similarities between the two teams. A lot of similarities between the two programs in general. And, never been to Stillwater, but I understand it's a difficult place to play. It's a loud stadium, very similar to ours. I think it's within 1,000 people or so of our size stadium. So similarities there, but it's going to be a battle. That's all I can say. I mean, you look at what they do on tape and how they operate and what we've done so far this year, and it looks like a good matchup.
Do you like coaching in those hostile environments? Is there any kind of extra juice or satisfaction for you going into a place that is like that?
Oh, without a doubt. I've always enjoyed playing and coaching on the road, both, and going into hostile territory and having that us against the world mentality and circling the wagons, and I've always enjoyed that personally.
Kyle Whittingham, head coach of the Utes, is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Headed to Oklahoma State out there in Stillwater. Oklahoma State ranked 2 spots behind the Utes in the AP Top 25. A place that you can't probably afford, at least as easily, a slow start, coach. And I know that we all try to dial in the right formula for avoiding slow starts, but as you go through a season, how do you evaluate it? How do you change things? Or what do you do to try to make sure that you come out firing from that first whistle?
Well, ideally, you'd like to do that every week, and as you mentioned, if we knew the formula to that, or if anyone knew the formula to that, they'd be in great shape. I don't know. I don't want to say it's just purely circumstantial or luck involved, but the bottom line is there is some throughout the course of the season, you're going to have some starts that are better than others. I mean, that's just how it shakes out. And I can't remember a season where every single week we started fast or the opposite. And so it's just a matter of doing the work Monday through Friday. That's what the real key is the preparation Monday through Friday, and then being focused and dialed in at kickoff. And sometimes things just don't go your way early on. Sometimes you are a little flat. That can creep into it too, and again, that's just something that you try to avoid. But anyway, Utah State, for example, last week they were really juiced up and ready to go, and you could tell that they had been looking towards this game for a while. And of course, with the Bryson Barnes at quarterback, I'm sure he got them going a little bit too. But the key is we were able to withstand the early emotion and passion that they brought and settle in and take control of the game as the game progressed. But But yeah, ideally, you'd like to get out to a 14-0 lead every single week, but that's just not reality. I mean, you just got to be able to. The key is to put 4 quarters together that are good enough to win the game, and that's how you evaluate the game is in its entirety. You can pick spots pretty much every week during a game where you didn't play as well as other spots in the game. So being consistent as you can possibly be through 4 quarters, that's the key.
With the continuity of this Oklahoma State team, I mean, staff's been in place a long time, just like most of your staff. They have a ton of returning starters. Does it change the tape study? Does it change the game planning? Do you go back a little bit further when you're looking at kind of the continuity in the product?
Well, we do go back, particularly this early in the year, and look at past years' tape. But as you mentioned, with the stability and the consistency in the staff, there's not a lot of variation. And so really the thing that you pay attention to most from a year to year would be different personnel that's in there. But like you said, they've got a ton of returning starters. I think it was 18 or something like that, and a bunch of returning starters and a bunch of seniors on offense. I think 8 of their 11 starters are seniors, and so a lot of maturity on their on their team. And we have done our homework, and as the season progresses, you do less and less looking back to last year because the body of work in the current year is enough. You don't need to go back.
And one of those starters for the Cowboys is Ollie Gordon, who was the best running back in the country last year. Through 3 games, he's yet to really get going. He's only averaging about 3.5 yards a carry right now. Why, Coach? Are you able to take on tape?
Well, he's a terrific back, I can tell you that. And last year he was, really productive. I mean, he gained a ton of yards last year, and just hasn't been able to get untracked quite yet. And we can hopefully we can keep that going for one more week. But last year he was 1,700 plus yards and over 6 yards a carry, and just had a terrific year. But he's a guy that is very physical type of runner. He's 6'2" and over 220 pounds. Kind of guy that wears you out as the game goes on and gets stronger as the game goes on.
On paper, they have the worst passing defense in the conference right now through 3 games. The numbers don't always tell the full story. The tape usually does. So what are you seeing from them in their passing defense?
Well, they have struggled a little bit, but they've got good athletes back there. The secondary is, all 6 feet plus and good athletic kids. And so not really sure exactly what the reason is, but they have given up some yards through the air. There's no doubt about that. But they're 3-0. They found a way to be 3-0 in spite of that. And so I'm sure that's something that they're addressing this week and trying to get corrected.
Coach, I know you have a busy day, and we won't take too much more of your time. But before I let you go, I want to ask you about Van Fillinger because through 3 games, he's leading your team in sacks and in tackles. He's been impactful in special teams. He's 100% healthy and has just been an absolute star on your defense. And just wanted your thoughts on his breakout here in these first 3 games.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not surprising. As you mentioned, he's completely healthy, and that's really the key. He was pretty gimpy all last year, played through it just on sheer toughness, and that's just who he is. I mean, he doesn't want to miss games, and so he was doing the best he could last year. But this year, he's feeling great. He played every single snap in the Utah State game on Saturday. He didn't miss a snap, and that's just who he is. He's a warrior. I mean, he's a guy that loves to compete. He's physically fit. I mean, he's capable of playing every snap because of how he takes care of himself and his state of conditioning. But terrific player, and means a ton to this football team. And I believe you're going to see him playing on Sundays when he's done here at Utah.
Any thoughts before we let you go on the conference at large? I know we're just getting this thing started, but your first conference game, even though you have played one conference opponent again in Oklahoma State, what do you think of the Big 12 in these early goings?
Yeah, there's been some interesting scores and things that have happened that you wouldn't think would have happened, but it looks like it's going to be a very competitive league, and there's 3 or 4 teams right now that are the favorites to come out as champions, but who knows? You never know how things are going to unfold, and I think we'll have a lot better picture of what's going on in the league in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Coach, always appreciate your time. Good luck in Stillwater. We'll talk again soon.
Okay, I'll see. Appreciate you having me on. Take care.
That's Kyle Whittingham, head coach of the Utes. And I didn't ask about Cam Rising because guess what? He's not going to give you anything about Cam Rising. I got 8 minutes with Coach. I'm not going to waste 30 seconds of it on a no comment. We don't say anything about injuries that are not season ending. All right? So don't come at me with my Big J journalist stuff.
Hey, how come you didn't ask about Cam Rising?
I saw you back there trying to judge me, Alonzo. I'm not having it.
That's all. That's daily though. That's a part of the job.
That's factual. That's true.
Yeah. We accept it for what it is.
Big thanks to Kyle Whittingham for joining us. Big thanks to Jordy and the sports information staff up there at the University of Utah. Best in the business. They're so great, and we appreciate their hard work. We'll unpack some of Kyle Whittingham's thoughts, and I'll get back into this conversation we were having about the absolute inexcusable errors at the highest level of sport. There's some really good responses coming in on Twitter at RealOC Sports and on the text line at 877-353-0700. Just getting rolling on the Sean O'Connell Show on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700, 92.1. An absolutely inexcusable error in sports, pro sports, college sports, because those are pro sports now. The thing that when you see that mistake made, you're just like, I cannot. That's a fireable offense. Get rid of that person. There's a lot of them coming in 8773.
When you watch some of them throw even a ball, like a routine grounder that they get to throw to first, they're like, what do I do? That's a thing. That's really a thing.
That actually is definitely a thing.
Yeah, so that's why I excuse pitchers from that. But yes, I agree with that. If you are an outfielder or an infielder and you are unable to catch a pop fly, you should be designated for assignment immediately.
It's just, and again, there's a standard deviation of error on all things in sports where, like, if you do it once, fine.
Yeah.
If it happens to you twice in a 162-game baseball season, dang it, that's too bad. But the guy that you know that you have to, like, look, when I went transferred to Weber State, all right, and I was moved to the offensive side of the ball at Utah and then stayed there at Weber State, and they were just like, you're technically in the running back room, you're a fullback, just smash things out of the way, okay? We're going to try and run behind you, just go run and smash into that thing. I'm terrible at catching a football, all right? Now, that's one of the roles of a fullback in most offenses. You have to be able – that Carson Ryan route that we saw.
That's a fullback route.
That's a fullback pass. That's
pretty sure that play is called the Mike Allstop.
That's you have to be able to do that, all right? And, like, everybody knew, dude, don't throw to him. And I'm not proud of that. Like, that's not good. That's inexcusable. That's why I should have been playing linebacker, all right? Because that's why people play defense. They can't catch. So they become corners.
Yeah, so corners are just receivers that can't catch.
Yes. Linebackers are just running backs that can't catch. Okay?
So you were the audible gasp guy.
I was more like the audible groan guy. Just like the ugh.
Yeah. And
that's fine. All right? I'm over it now. I found my groove. I found my niche. It wasn't in football. Everything's fine. The inexcusable, and I'll give you one from combat sports. Missing weight. Absolutely inexcusable. It's ridiculous and it's stupid. It's not. You can't excuse it. And there's this weird culture in boxing and more so in MMA where when you miss weight and everyone sees it, this guy suffers, dehydrates himself to a dangerous level, goes and stands on the scale, and he's shaking, and he's about to pass out, and then there's this outcry. When are we going to stop this brutal practice? Is someone going to have to die? No, you know what? That person needs to fight in a different weight class.
Yes.
That's on them. The organization doesn't tell you what weight class to fight in. They don't.
The fighter makes that decision.
The fighter in his camp make that decision. And also, even people with extreme weight cuts, they do it wrong.
Yeah.
The ones that get hurt are doing it wrong. Now, there are, again, rare exceptions to this. Women have a whole different animal to deal with, and sometimes they miss weight because hormone cycles are what they are, and water retention is what it is, and you give it like kind of a half pass in that regard. Although, even that is predictable to some level. Are we right? So, missing weight, this is the hill I die on, and other fighters get so mad at me, and coaches get so mad at me, and camps and people, hey, just don't say stuff like that. And I'm like, no, it is your fault if you get hurt missing weight, or it's your fault if you miss weight, and it's punitive now. They take at least 20% of your purse, but guess whose fault it is? Yours!
Well, I think of years ago when Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was boxing, and he's a big guy to begin with, and the cutoff, I think, was 230 for heavyweights, and this guy was missing weight all of the time. And it's like, yo, you have one job. Just if you can't fight at that weight, then be a super heavyweight or whatever, right? But in an MMA, I forgot who it was a couple weeks ago. They missed weight by 3 pounds in the UFC, and that and again, that's a part of the job. That's a part of the gig. I also often think about how Conor McGregor, who is a big guy, would cut weight to 45.
He's not a big guy.
Well, he's a big guy for a small guy. But he would cut all that weight down to 45, and my guy looked disheveled.
Yeah, he did. But guess what?
He still did it.
He made weight.
Yeah.
Right? So it's possible. I mean, we had Kayla Harrison, the 2-time Olympian on, 2-time gold medalist in judo. She's fighting on the Salt Lake card that's coming here October 5th.
Yeah.
She's fighting now at 135 pounds, okay? In the Olympics, when she was younger, she was competing at 172 pounds.
Yeah, she's a bigger person.
She is a muscular woman. She's above average height. She it is a grind, and it is a science, and it is a terrible endeavor for her to make 135 pounds. But she makes it. And by the way, I was calling her fights when she was struggling to make 155 pounds. And now she's somehow chopped another 20 pounds off that. It's absolutely bananas, but she does it, okay? So that's one. It's inexcusable. You just go up a different weight class. You can't make it at 155 pounds? Well, guess what? That means you're a welterweight. Go fight at 170. I, in my career, cut weight to 185 pounds 3 times.
And I assume you hated all 3 of those times.
I hated it. I lost 2 of those fights because I was just miserable, weak, pathetic. And so guess what? I went to my coach and I said, I know that I have the frame of a 185-pounder. I'm not as tall or as broad as a lot of these light heavyweights. But until they push me around, until somebody overpowers me and is like markedly stronger than me in this weight class, that's where I'm going to be, because this cutting weight thing is for the birds. And he was like, yeah, good idea.
And then John Jones knocked you out, and here we are.
Well, no, I never had to do that.
That's true. But that's another guy. Like, the amount of weight that guy cuts, he's a massive human.
John Jones is 6'5" with a 7-foot wingspan, and he reliably made 205 pounds for the entirety of his career.
Which is insane.
Now he's a heavyweight?
Yeah, comfortably.
He's got those teeny little bird legs, but still, he had to do some work to make 205.
Daniel Cormier.
Well, come on.
He's built like me. I don't know how he made 205.
Don't do that. Daniel Cormier is just like he is. Daniel Cormier is one of the best guys to reference when you're like, people don't know anything about combat sport. You're like, let me show you some dangerous men to ever walk the planet.
Daniel Cormier.
Daniel Cormier.
Cain
You look
Velasquez.
at him, and he's just like kind of chubby. Cain Velasquez, undersized heavyweight, not a single ounce of muscular definition to him. Fedor looks like your plumber
in a tracksuit,
and you're just like, yeah, these are some of the scariest dudes ever. Even like Anderson Silva,
yeah, he
was never
wasn't the
shredded.
biggest guy. No.
Anyway, we'll get off the combat sports because I know people get a little bit far afield with that.
How do you feel about, and someone said it, I think, on Twitter, calling timeouts with no timeouts?
It's Chris Webber? No. Inexcusable. Like, a lack of awareness in a game, in a game situation, is always, for me, going to be something that falls on this inexcusable line. If you don't know down and distance, wide receivers running their route like 3 yards short of the sticks, and that's where you break it off, that's inexcusable. It's third down, you need the conversion. It's fourth down, you need the conversion. And your comeback route, you go 2 yards short of the sticks, and then you do the button hook, and you come back and you drive toward the ball, and then you get tackled, and then you stand up, and you're like, oh, no, and you do the whole, like, showmanship, and like, I can't believe that just happened. No, we can all believe it happened. You didn't run the route to the necessary distance.
The Falcons did a great job yesterday with those young receivers during that 2-minute drive of the situational awareness of Drake London catching that ball and then like, oh, yeah, I need to go out of bounds. Like but I feel like that's a part of the gig, right? But also Raheem Morris managed the clock very well in that situation, all around.
And that's, by the way, that Monday Night Football game is the impetus for this conversation, because you could say it's inexcusable for Saquon Barkley to drop that game-sealing catch. You can also say that it's inexcusable for Nick Sirianni and company to decide that the passing route was the right way to go in that situation. It's a little bit harder to make that case because the route was open, and if it's executed properly, then
it's over.
It's over. But that, I mean, it's there's a debate, right?
I'm still convinced that the Eagles hired Kellen Moore in a ploy by the Cowboys to just decimate their rivals in the conference. That's just my thinking because of the disdain they have for each other. I mean, Shea and Irving, who we've been trying to get on the show for a minute, beside himself on Twitter yesterday, even with all of that. That's Kellen Moore for you. So I'm not going to completely put all the blame on Saquon. I'm going to put some of it on Kellen too.
Lack of effort coming in as an inexcusable error. Absolutely. Again, we're at the highest levels here. When you see people loafing, when you see people on the backside of a play getting unenthusiastic about their route because it was not designed for them, that's thankfully football has weeded that out for the most part. I will say this, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion. Load management, to me, is borderline inexcusable.
I agree with that.
Like, when you hear about these guys who now refuse on their $40 million a year salaries to play a back-to-back, I just can't get on board with that player. How many guys, when we were coming up, were playing every single game, every single night, most of the minutes in the game every single night on a basketball floor? How many guys in NFL football were sitting out because they had strains? If I see one more NFL football player with a calf strain missing multiple weeks, I'm looking at you, Christian McCaffrey.
I thought he had
I'm
an
looking
Achilles
at you,
situation.
Cooper Kupp. It's tendonitis in his Achilles.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's Deebo Samuel.
Greg Kittle, who had to go to the cart.
It's driving me nuts. Do you know how many guys do you know how many, like, 1979 NFL football players are driving around motorized wheelchairs right now being like, you guys are sitting out because of calf strains?
Hey, so to quote James Peterson, who just walked in here with a solid dad joke, Christian McCaff strain over there, letting the vibe deteriorate.
Wait, no. Hold on a minute. How did James even hear that? Because he was walking towards the studio to make his dad joke.
Well, he is the program director, so he has to listen to the nonsense we talk about.
He's just like, he's got an implant in his head that just goes the whole time.
Yeah, he got the Elon
ESPN
bit.
700.
So when Kittle went in the cart because of cramping, you lost it.
Dude. And I love Kittle. I think he's like pretty much an old school tough guy. But
We can't say that now based on what you just said.
what are we doing here? Cramping? Really?
Cooper Kupp really is killing my fantasy team right now, though.
Your poor fantasy team.
And Isaiah Pacheco.
Clock mismanagement is one that, look, we've seen this. I mean, there are guys like Mario Cristobal Mario Cristobal would be a national championship coach if he knew how to manage a clock.
Ouch.
If he knew how to do some end of game management.
So then what are the Carolina Panthers doing that's just wrong then? Like, what are they mismanaging?
Well, here's the malpractice of personnel mismanagement. That's inexcusable because of, again, you have a dream job that everybody in the world wishes they had.
Yeah.
And you are paid very, very well for that dream job, and you still somehow find ways to step all over yourself and fumble the bag. It's like, thankfully, when I don't have to tell you these things are inexcusable because the job themselves says, yep, that mistake you made, inexcusable. How do you know it's inexcusable? You fired.
Because DJ Moore, thriving in Chicago. C-Mac was thriving until he got a calf strain. Baker Mayfield doing a great job after he left Carolina. So, I mean, that's a crime. That is a crime against all of those guys. Poor Bryce Young. I feel so bad for that kid.
Calling timeout with no timeouts is an absolute great one. Inexcusable to celebrate before crossing the finish line. The finish line, yes. The end line, yes. Not knowing where the first down is and stepping out. Ooh, how much does that annoy you?
That's pretty annoying, especially because the indicator is orange. I am colorblind,
Here's another
and I can
one.
see the indicator.
Here's another one that you will see it at least 3 times a weekend in college football. Wide receivers, I understand the nature of the position. Wide receivers get to touch the ball on a good day 8 times. Right? So every one of them wants to just go ham sandwich whenever they get that ball. But you still have to know where the sticks are. You still have to know where the line to gain or the end zone is. And what you will see so often, I'm talking every single weekend in college football, is a guy who on a crossing route, on a comeback route, on whatever, he will be within distance to he can just dive for the line. He can fall forward and it's a first down. But what do every single time, Alonzo? They start the happy feet. They start the tap dancing. They start to do the wiggle and shake, and they want to juke that defender who is fully broke down, fully gathered, already has a hand on him, and they want to get that guy loose and break this away for a touchdown or for a big play. So they give up a yard or two, and now instead of it being a first down, now you're in 3rd and short, and now you're leaving it to your coordinator and your offensive line and your running back and your team to get the first down that you already earned because you wanted to get too fancy. That one drives me nuts.
How do you feel about unsportsmanlike conduct penalties?
Well, that's where the taking your helmet off to celebrate one comes in.
Well, I say that because, as you recall, last night Drake London was shooting that gat into the air, and he got an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. However, first touchdown of the game in that game yesterday, my guy did a full-on front flip, landed on his feet. That was not a penalty.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Everybody in the world knows that the gun stuff is not allowed. Do I think it's stupid? Yes. Do I think that we really have to pretend that, using the pistol fingers to celebrate sends some message of pro-gun, pro-violence to the kids out there watching? No, I don't believe that. But guess what? You are told it's a point of emphasis for the NFL. It's a point of emphasis in college football. You're not supposed to do the gun stuff to celebrate. All right. Come up with something more creative. You know what I want to see, Drake London? A fencing celebration.
The Macarena?
We just taught my daughter the Macarena. It's the cutest thing in the world to watch.
She's singing it too.
To watch it, yes. She's trying desperately to sing it. Just like all of us. Well, not all of us. Not you.
Correct.
But just like all of us gringos. Her singing the Macarena is this. Hey, Macarena. That's exactly what it is.
Hey, at least she's got the rhythm down.
Yeah,
I mean,
good.
Derek Carr had a great celebration. Should never dance again in public, but I mean, Derek Carr had himself a solid celebration over the weekend.
Here's an unforgivable one from 1624. A receiver starting to run before catching the ball. Oh, that's a bad one. How many times have you seen a touchdown spoiled by that wide open receiver? Ball's coming in, hands framed it perfectly, and just takes the eye off the ball, trying to get ready to turn that thing upfield. Dropped.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Keep them coming. 877-353-0700 on the Dish Bros text line and at Real OC Sports on Twitter. The most inexcusable things, the errors that you see in professional sports and in college sports that you just can't get your mind wrapped around. Also, a reminder, the final Bees home stand at Smith's Ballpark begins tonight. Text Bees to 33986. Win a pair of tickets to the final home stand. Go check out a Bees game before you can't at Smith's Ballpark anymore.
I hate that so much.
We're gonna have to go out to one of the games.
I'm gonna try to go tomorrow. I have to go to Stillwater, and so and the Dodgers, the OKC Dodgers, ironically, are in town.
Ooh.
So get my fix in.
All right.
See the homie Tony Parks.
You know what, I might need to.
Maybe we should go. Let's have one last field trip.
We ought to do that.
Yeah. Especially since
you know what? I think I'm on dad duty tonight. Maybe I'll take the girls. Keep them up late.
Hold it out until tomorrow. We'll go tomorrow.
All right.
Because I can't go tonight because of the coaches show.
That's right. Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show is right here on these ESPN tonight after Spence Checketts in the drive. And also, we've got baseball on tonight. Astros and who?
The team who shall not be named. The Astros. And I actually forgot. This is me being really bad at my job because James actually came in here to tell me that.
Well, it's both of us being bad at our job. It's actually my job to deliver these messages. It's not really your job. It's mine.
Oh, yes, it's true. Astros and Padres. Oh, both teams that shouldn't be mentioned on my end. What? Why do you look so disappointed? It's fall baseball.
You can't hate every baseball team just because you're a Dodgers fan.
Well, I mean, the Padres are a natural rival, and then the Astros, we know what happened there.
Yeah, we do. Cheaters. Inexcusable errors made in pro and college sports. Keep them coming in, 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. Lots left to get to, and we are 7 minutes away from the Oklahoma City, Oklahoma State perspective on this Utah versus Cowboys game. Jeff Johnson's going to be joining us in our Big 12 at noon. Don't go anywhere. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Jeff Johnson from Oklahoma State's Rivals is going to join us here in like 3 minutes. We finished our first hour with Farmer and Chemist. Doug from Farmer and Chemist, our good friends, new partners on the Sean O'Connell Show, and a place that if you haven't checked out down on Main Street in Midvale, you really should. Also online at farmerandchemist.com. Doug, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. I'm great. Nice listening today. Thank you.
So the CBD world is a little convoluted for folks because you can wander into like a gas station and there's a CBD labeled product, and that doesn't always feel right for people. Farmer and Chemist is different because locally owned and operated, and it's pharmacists who are overseeing the product selection, helping you pick what's going to work for whatever you're dealing with. You guys are taking a medically influenced approach at something that a lot of people have just slapped a label on.
Yeah, Sean, you're exactly right. There's a CBD available everywhere, from the grocery stores to the gas stations to online. And while that's nice, if it's good product, then wonderful. If it's not good product, then it's sketchy, and you don't know if the quality is good, where the hemp was grown, if there's really CBD in it. So at Farmer and Chemist, Jeff and I make every effort to produce pharmaceutical-grade CBD products that help relieve pain and inflammation, anxiety, and help with sleep.
It's we had a little flurry, a little storm this morning. I think that even up in the mountains, a little bit of a dusting. So, everyone, the bones get old and creaky. The joints start to get a little bit harder to get moving when we get these cold mornings. You have products that can help with arthritis, chronic pain, cold sores, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, I was feeling it this morning, and we have our Problem Salved, which is packed with a couple thousand milligrams of CBD, plus some CBG, which is an excellent anti-inflammatory, and rub that onto an achy joint or sore muscle, and it provides almost immediate fantastic relief.
Well, it's
really fabulous.
I could testify to that because you hooked me up with some. My wife's been dealing with some muscle pain and some like pinched nerve kind of stuff going on in her back, just tension. A little Problem Salved, and boom, feels better, smells great. It's a great product, and just one of the many on offer at Farmer and Chemist. Also, special deal for our ESPN 700 listeners, right?
Absolutely. There's a discount if you mention ESPN 700 or come into the store and mention that you heard us on Sean's show, and you get a 20% discount on all of our products. The gummies, the salves, the tinctures, the lotions, the roll-ons, whatever you're looking for. And our expert staff is there to help you find the right product that will relieve your pain or your stress or help you get to sleep.
Down on historic Main Street in Midvale or online at farmerandchemist.com, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6, Saturday, 10 to 5, closed on Sundays. Doug, thanks for your time. Appreciate you.
Sean, you're awesome. Thank you.
Keep those answers of the inexcusable errors in pro and college sports coming in for the hot lunch, brought to you by Jersey Mike's. Every sandwich fresh sliced right in front of you. Cheesesteaks made to order on the grill. So what are you waiting for? It's lunchtime. Stop in for lunch today. Jersey Mike's is a sub above. All right. Jeff Johnson's going to join us. He's been covering this Oklahoma State Cowboys team for a long time. Let's get acquainted, not just with the Cowboys roster and what they're dealing with right now, but with T-Boone Pickens Stadium and what you should expect as a Ute fan making the road trip. Jeff Johnson in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700. Time for some big. Whoa. Did you hear that?
I did. I mean, the song is called "The Kids Aren't All Right." Is OC all right?
That was crazy.
That was crazy.
Time for some Big 12 at noon, brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. Go to mountainlandsupply.com. Big 12 Insider today is Jeff Johnson, Oklahoma State Insider at OK State Rivals on Twitter. First time on the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you coming on to give us some time and some perspective on this Oklahoma State team. This is the game that Ute fans have had circled on the schedule since it came out. On the road for the first time in Big 12 play and against a really, really good Oklahoma State team. Have the Cowboy fans and even the team done the same thing with this trip for the Utes?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you can go even broader and say for the new look Big 12, the members, fans of the schools in the new look Big 12, this is a game that a lot of people have had circled, going into it. And so far, the two teams haven't disappointed to set up a pretty big time matchup that really kicks off the new look Big 12 with a couple of the marquee teams that are out there that are, I think both programs are viewing themselves as, the former Big 12, the championship typically went through Oklahoma or Texas. Texas really didn't get it done near as often as it seems like they maybe should have, but most years, one of those two teams is probably the favorite, probably somebody you're going to have to beat if you want to be Big 12 champions. And I think Utah and Oklahoma State both feel like they're in position now going forward to be one or two of those teams that people say, okay, you're in, you're out. If you think you're pretty good in the Big 12, you're going to have to beat Oklahoma State. You're going to have to beat Utah, if they're on the schedule or in a championship game or twice.
Yeah, twice might be the reality for these two teams as they face off in Week 4. I want to talk about look Utah. They're 3-0. It hasn't been clean or pretty. They've only played their starting quarterback for a total of one game. Obviously, for Oklahoma State, they're 3-0, but for whatever reason, they haven't been able to get the run game going or the pass defense going. I always say it's a sign of good things if you can win ugly, but these two teams both fancy themselves premier brands in this new look Big 12, as you already mentioned. Are we going to get that? Have they had 3 weeks now to kind of figure out and work out the kinks, really on both sides, but especially with Oklahoma State, where I know you're most knowledgeable? Are we going to get the best version of the Cowboys now in Week 4?
I don't know. I rewind to a year ago doing a similar interview. I can't remember who the fourth game was last year, but at that point, I'm looking at it and saying, I don't know anything about this Oklahoma State team. They may be terrible, because a year ago, this time almost exactly, they're coming off a home loss, and not just a loss. They got their butts kicked to South Alabama. You had the whole 3 quarterback rotation, which is one of the dumber things I've ever seen in college football, much less from a Mike Gundy coached team. Of course, his son was one of those 3 rotating quarterbacks, which I'm sure probably played into it a little bit. But, at this point last year, but besides that uncertainty at quarterback, Ollie Gordon had done almost nothing. He's actually done more right now than he had 3 games into the season last year. And it was starting with that fourth game where Oklahoma State looked like they were starting. They changed blocking, which was one thing, and a weird thing that they've gone back to zone back blocking concepts after going away from it last year when Gordon took off and had just an amazing year. So I think we may see that again, saying, okay, we need to simplify things, change our blocking schemes a little bit. Of course, the big difference this year, and Gundy really harped on it yesterday in his weekly media luncheon, and that is we're seeing 1 or 2 extra guys in the box to defend the run every game. And, even last year, as Gordon was putting together that incredible season, they didn't see it all the time. And Utah does a lot anyway, regardless, of what type of running game they're seeing from the upcoming opponent. So I think, as far as that goes, you're going to see a stacked box again this weekend. And That's kind of what Tulsa did. A lot of times they actually had two guys extra in the box, which obviously freed up the pass game, and Alan Bowman was able to put things together and have a pretty big day against the Golden Hurricane on Saturday.
Jeff Johnson, Oklahoma State insider, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking Utes versus Cowboys coming up, a 3 p.m. kick. Is that a good or bad thing in Stillwater?
It's relatively neutral as far as the crowd goes. Night games, as is the case most places, but night games in Boone Pickens Stadium are kind of a whole different level. It's for the home crowd. It's a better kick than an 11 a.m. start. As far as that goes, but of course, Mike Gundy, he said many times, if it was up to him, he understands the whole TV aspect, and it will never be that way ever again. But as far as he's concerned, college football should start at 2:30 in the afternoon, local time to wherever you're at, and that's what it should be. If he could schedule them all, that's what he'd do. So I think he could put Gundy on the side of, it's pretty ideal. But from what I've seen over the years, the night games at Boone Pickens Stadium, particularly for a big matchup like we've got Saturday, it just ramps up that home field advantage that much more. And Utah fans may not know, not having played there, Boone Pickens Stadium is one of the most unique setups in the country. For one thing, it runs east-west. So, you talk about a runner planting a foot and getting north-south. Doesn't happen there. It's one of the few in the entire country that runs east-west. It's a partial bowl with Gallagher Arena blocking one end, so it kind of contains the sound. But the big thing is there is no room on the sidelines. If you guys have a sideline reporter on Saturday, watch out, because there's nowhere to go. I haven't done it in a few years, but used to spend a lot of time on the sidelines as a photographer, and you can sure enough get taken out. How close I'm talking, when you're down in the corner of an end zone, say at the pylon, the wall and the fans are less than 10 feet behind you at that point.
Wow. And loud because of that, I imagine.
It is. The bench areas do have a little bit more room, but it's still not a lot. And the fans are absolutely on top of the teams on the sidelines. And let me tell you, on the north side of the stadium, Utah's going to hear from OSU fans all night long. And it's so close, you can't block it out. You can't not hear it. It is right there. And those people that are in those lower boxes take big pride in staying on opposing teams the entire game.
Since we're talking about the crowd and we're talking about, the stadium, like Rice Eccles has a reputation for being a tough place to play. It gets loud, but most of the time you hear visiting fans will say, hey, we had a pretty pleasant experience. Yeah, during the game you get your trash talk and whatever, but around town, Salt Lake City is a cool spot. You get some good food. Right. You go up there. What's it like in Stillwater? I mean, I think I know the answer to this. My parents live in Oklahoma, and I think I have a decent sense of how Oklahomans are. But what's it going to be like? Because there is a healthy contingent of Utah fans traveling to this game because of the pre-matchup that you already mentioned. What's it going to be like for those fans?
There's going to be, and not too terribly unusual to have pretty good contingent of opposing fans. Should be relatively pleasant as far as the stands. Certainly pregame tailgating, you've got to find a lot of hospitality. Not a lot of negativity or trash talking or fights starting and stuff like that. I can tell you Arkansas traveled extremely well, and you saw it a lot on Twitter. Arkansas fans coming away from that game saying, hey, it didn't go our way, so it wasn't very enjoyable from that perspective. But Oklahoma State fans couldn't have been better. Welcoming, friendly trash talk if that's going on, but nothing too serious, and just made the game day experience really nice for some opposing fans. Of course, being 3 hours away from between the two campuses, they traveled pretty well.
Jeff Johnson, Oklahoma State Insider, is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Utes versus Cowboys. That's number 13 in the number 12 in the country versus number 14 in the country right now. I cannot help but be struck by the similarities between these two teams, even though I had Kyle Whittingham on the show earlier today, Jeff. He says, I've never been to Stillwater. I don't know really fully what to expect, which is crazy to think because he's been in the position 20 years. Mike Gundy's been in the position 20 years. Seventh-year quarterback on both sides somehow. Physical teams with a reputation for a loud stadium. I mean, it's a battle of twin brothers, basically. And now
it
they're
really is, and it came up the other day, and Mike was asked about Kyle, and he said, I had run into him, and basically said hello a handful of times up until Big 12 meetings this year was the first time he ever spent any time with Kyle. Had the opportunity to sit down and visit for a while. Spoke really, really highly, and why wouldn't you? There's so many similarities between those two guys, between the success they've had at their schools. Mike said Utah is one of the teams. He's got about 7 that he tries to make a point to watch most weekends or when he can, of teams that he compares to the program at Oklahoma State. And that is basically, he defined it as, a program that goes out there that on paper and by the recruiting services, obviously Rivals is one of those that falls in that category, are considered average. Their players, their talent level is considered average, and they have success that's well above that. And he didn't really go into who else, but made a point of saying Utah is one of those programs. And the reason he cares to watch Utah and those handful of other programs is because of the similarities he sees with what they've been able to do compared to what he's been able to do. And I think he could probably go as far to say he's a bit of a fan of Utah and other teams that kind of fit the mix that he's had at Oklahoma State for 20 years.
Yeah, the similarities in this one, they just strike me. And so I guess the question is, when Utah matches up with other teams that try to be bullies and that play a similar brand of football, I think Utah fans like that. I know I do, because it's like, okay, if you're going to stand in a phone booth and slug this thing out, I'm confident that Utah can win a game like that. How does Oklahoma State do when they match up with teams that are like them?
I think pretty well. There have been Oklahoma State teams in the past that maybe didn't do so well. Gundy from day one has preached, you go to play us, we may win, we may lose, but I want you to feel like you got punched in the mouth when the game's over. And by and large, has been able to project that feeling onto his teams. You look back to last year, again, at this point last year, they didn't look like they were very good. Coming off just extremely embarrassing non-conference loss at home. And then kind of started to put things together, and they won ugly the majority of last year. There weren't very many games that you came away from it saying, okay, Oklahoma State played really good today. So therefore, and there are so many of those guys back, out of your 22 starters, I think there's 19, maybe 18 with Colin Oliver being out for an extended period of time, but just a tremendous amount of experience. You talked about the 7th-year quarterbacks. Oklahoma State has returning offensive linemen that are in their 6th year, and have really unusual there because Oklahoma State has had massive offensive line problems for about 10 years. Those guys started playing as redshirt freshmen and sophomores. So not only do they have the age, they've got all the experience that goes with that, where, typically you don't see that in the big guys, maybe don't play until their junior, senior year. So experience all over the field for Oklahoma State. But it's entirely likely or at least possible that this is a game that whoever wins it comes out saying, ooh, that was ugly, but we're glad to have the W.
How healthy is this Oklahoma State team? I saw some questions about Oliver. What do we know?
Yeah, Oliver's out. It hasn't really been defined other than, and Gundy's kind of funny. He doesn't talk about injuries, except for sometimes he does. He can get real defensive and say, we don't talk about injuries here, and kind of jump all over a reporter. And then other times he'll be fairly forthcoming Oliver is out for a while. Basically, he said, ask me again in a month, and maybe we'll know something more. From what I'm hearing, I kind of doubt he's back in a month. But as far as Saturday goes, no chance with him. Other than that, Justin Wright's a linebacker, but he's been out for the whole season so far and missed all of last season with an injury also. So not a real big effect in terms of what's been out there the first couple of games for OSU. Other than that, they seem to be pretty healthy. They did have right tackle Jake Springfield was out with an injury last weekend. Don't really have any update there. We're fortunate enough that they've got enough experience on that line. They were able to flip a backup from left tackle over to right, and that guy had started a bunch of games previously, so not a major loss. But that would be probably the question when going into this weekend would be Jake Springfield on the offensive line.
All right, so give me the scouting report on Utah. What is, in your perspective, in the Cowboy perspective, what do they have to do to come out with the win here against the Utes?
They've got to run football. My gun is going to tell you that regardless of any opponent they play. But, and I think there's an acknowledgement going into it with Utah that that's going to be an uphill climb. That doesn't mean, though, that Gundy's going to go away from it. They may get a little more creative in how they're trying to feed Ollie Gordon, but they're going to get him his touches. And I think that's probably the biggest key. Then you look at the quarterback situation. I really haven't seen a good update. I personally expect Rising will start and play the whole game. That's totally opposite of what Mike Gundy said yesterday. They kind of feel like they're going to see the backup on Saturday, but they're preparing for both. Not having breakdowns has been an Achilles heel. Brian Nardo's in his second season. He's an interesting guy, typical Gundy out there hired. He goes and hires him from a Division II school. So he's just really in his second year in FBS. And just total breakdowns have been the unfortunate characteristic of his defense, just completely blown coverages, or if they're going to spy on Rising or go that route, a breakdown there, and all of a sudden, he's off on his own with nobody around. To me, those are probably two of the big things. I think for both teams, clean game's going to be huge. Oklahoma State so far this year has played pretty clean in terms of penalties. But that type of matchup, those little things like a penalty here, or if you have a whole bunch, it can snowball on you. Real critical for any type of matchup like we're going to see on Saturday.
What do you think of this stretch? This just little 2-gamer for Oklahoma State. You gotta host Utah and then go on the road to Kansas State. I mean, the whole season rides on these next 2 weeks in some arguments.
Oh yeah, I think it absolutely does for Oklahoma State, and to a lesser degree, I guess, because they just don't have quite the same gauntlet, but a little bit for Utah and K-State as well. And you mentioned the poll numbers going into this game. I think it's kind of interesting what the pollsters have done with the Big 12 teams right now. Got them all stacked up. You've got 12-14 this weekend, and K-State's right there in the middle of them at 13. To me, that could be disrespect for the league, and there's probably some of that nationally still. I think it's also in part kind of saying, well, we're going to know a whole lot more in 2 weeks, so we'll just kind of keep them bunched up where they are, and then whoever comes out on top, this weekend, particularly in the Utah-Oklahoma State matchup, you may see a pretty good jump there, and you may see the other one, drop quite a bit, but. As far as that 2-game stretch, Gundy yesterday had a funny comment. He said, I'm pretty good buddies with the commissioner, but he doesn't make the schedule. So apparently I sent my Christmas gift to the wrong person this year since he doesn't make the schedule, because they sure didn't do us any favors. But, by the same token, like everything else, it goes back to the money, and the money's with TV, and they're going to get those matchups they want. And I think going forward, it's entirely possible that Utah Oklahoma State is a regular, maybe every year, maybe not, but real regularly on the schedule.
I hope you don't mind me picking your brain about the Big 12 while I've got you on here, because
Sure.
I do appreciate your perspective. So you already mentioned, and I agree with you, there's a message being sent to the Big 12 by putting, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, 12, 13, 14. We'll figure out exactly what that message is after these next couple of weekends. Who else? Because no one's going to debate that those three teams all have a shot of winning the league, that those three teams are going to battle it out, over these next couple of weeks and establish a bit of a pecking order. Through 3 weeks, we have enough of a sample size, I think, to start making some educated guesses on the rest of the Big 12 Conference. And, UCF's one of the top rushing teams in the whole country. Arizona's had some bright spots, but they got beat up by K-State last week. Who else besides these three teams do you think is a factor in the title race?
So far I haven't watched a lot of Big 12 football this year. But the overriding thing, and I think this would apply to Utah fans and any of the others that are in their first year, maybe two, is, and I think it's what's missed nationally and doesn't show up in the polls and should. It was particularly true, obviously, while Oklahoma, Texas are still in the league, but that's not even, the top end is not really where the Big 12 stands out. It's the depth from that top end to the worst team in the league. Now, there are some years that the worst team in the league is just an automatic win, but often that's not the case. And those teams in the middle, it's a slog. You can't let up from week to week. Oklahoma State has Utah and K-State back to back. Well, it really wouldn't matter. Just week in, week out, it's going to be a dogfight. And usually there's not any teams in the league that are just awful. That may change now. There's been some expansion, but so far, last year we got the start of a sample size, and you couldn't relax any given week. Oklahoma State was on a pretty good run there, and then goes out to UCF and really kind of gets throttled. And they obviously were able to bounce back from that and still wind up in the Big 12 title game. But it's a pretty good example of there's no weeks off really in this league. And I think that's something that is missed nationally. And I'll be curious to kind of see what the Pac-12 schools think coming into it. Just an aside, Arizona State fans already kind of know, because when that matchup happens this year, it will be the third one in the row. The last 2 years were non-conference games, but there was a home and home in Stillwater and at Arizona State. So they've kind of gotten a taste for it, maybe where some others haven't. But it'll be interesting to see, kind of what their perspective of the Pac-12 schools is at the end of this year. Once the Big 12 slate's been gone through, and kind of where it stacks up with what they're used to and how it looks going forward.
All right, last thing before I let you go. I'm a college football fan first and foremost, and rivalry games have been one of the things that we all love about college football. Now, in Salt Lake City, we're lucky enough to have this conference realignment mess restore our in-state rivalry. The Holy War is back. BYU
Right.
Utah is now back. But the Big 12 Conference and your state lost Bedlam, which was one of the best rivalry games every single year in college football. How big a loss is that, and who's going to take the place as the next big rival for Oklahoma State now that the Sooners are off to the SEC?
It's obviously big. You can't discount it. I think if you polled Oklahoma State fans, you'd come in with pretty much being in favor of it not being on the schedule anymore. You said one of the biggest rivalry games year in, year out. It's only really been true for about 20, 25 years. Before that, Oklahoma State never won. So if you never win a game in a series, is it really a rivalry? And that was the case for a long time. It's obviously changed, and I think more recent past matters more, particularly to fans that aren't fans of either team. So it definitely did reach that status. At the same time, those same people would say, "Oh, I'm glad to see it go." Part of them hates to see it go, also. As far as who takes the place, that's interesting. Texas Tech, maybe. There's been some rivalry there over the years. There's it kind of cracks me up. Texas Tech fans are convinced Oklahoma State stole a bunch of their traditions. Guns up, the horse that rides after touchdowns. And, there's a lot of back and forth on social media as to who had it first and so forth. So that's always ratcheted that one up a little bit. Joey McGuire and Mike Gundy have never liked each other. And this goes back to McGuire being a high school coach down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and basically not letting Oklahoma State recruit Cedar Hill where he was at. So there's kind of that side to it. Utah, I think, certainly a possibility, and it may come down to between those two who becomes the bigger rivalry game of who's having success on a year in, year out basis. Certainly, based on what we've seen so far, I'm going to go with Utah over Texas Tech on that, which would impact how much that game means any given year. Just like this year, it's huge. That's maybe going to be as big a factor as anything else. And Texas Tech so far this year doesn't look like they're probably very good. So we'll see about that. And I know from this perspective, Gundy wants to keep as many Texas school games on his schedule any given year just because of recruiting. Now, on a related note, Oklahoma State has started to hit Utah pretty hard and have gotten some guys from Utah and seem excited about doing that going forward. And Gundy even talked about yesterday that it's going to be an impact. With Utah and BYU both, a Utah kid can look at Oklahoma State and say, well, they're going to play in my home state, at least at some point during my career if I go to Oklahoma State. So that's pretty cool. And that helps. And, I think it could very well work the opposite direction for Utah coming in and looking at kids in the state of Oklahoma, which I don't think is a typical area that they've recruited, but it is one of the things as the new conference opens up for all the different schools in it, from Florida to Utah, basically.
All right, I lied. I have one more question for you. We already touched on the fact that there's a lot of similarities, and Mike Gundy took his job, I think, 2 weeks after Kyle Whittingham took his job. They've both been there 20 years. The end is in sight for Kyle Whittingham. The exit plan, we don't know it in intimate detail, but, it's not going to be 5 more years. What about for Mike Gundy? Is there any signs of him slowing?
We talked about it yesterday, kind of almost unprompted. And, 10 years ago, if you'd have told me Gundy was still in coaching, period. I'm not just talking, getting fired or anything else at Oklahoma State. By his mid-50s, I'd have told you, no, he'll be out. And because that's what he said for a long time, that he didn't want to be coaching, at 60 plus. But yesterday, the answer was basically until somebody gets sick of me and tells me I'm done, I'm good for the foreseeable future. Now, he is a little bit younger than Kyle Whittingham. I think he's 56 or maybe turns 57 this year. So there is a little longer end of the tunnel for him, but it was kind of surprising. Now, I will tell you, every time Oklahoma State has struggled, which hasn't been often in the Gundy era, he starts to get pretty cranky, and you start to see, well, maybe he's just done with all this. It's been a few years since we've seen that, but it's been pretty consistent. He starts to get short with the media and makes comments to the effect of, I don't care what fans think. Things that you typically don't hear college football coaches say. continued success, I think, is part of the answer on that. But straight out of the horse's mouth, he's not seeing the end in sight for himself at all right now.
Well,
and he also has all three of his boys are now out of the house, off doing their own thing, and that's a factor I think for any coach, but definitely for Gundy.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see how this weekend works out. I appreciate you giving me – I just chewed up 40 minutes of your day. I only planned on half that, but it was all great stuff. So thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you in Salt Lake City next year.
Sounds good to me.
That is
Appreciate you having me on.
Jeff Johnson, Cowboy Insider, Oklahoma State at OK State Rivals, if you want to follow him on Twitter. Insiders brought to you by Larry H. Miller Ford Draper, Ford King, Utah's #1 volume Ford dealer, and they will beat any trade-in price in town by $750 anytime, any day. Find them online, lhmforddraper.com. All right, Jeff just confirmed one of the worst possible nightmares. We've talked about it. We got to touch on it again. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700. You see this bad weather? You see that snow came down in the mountains?
Don't
Snow-
say that.
Snow in the mountains. It happened.
Wow.
I'm seeing cameras attached to the chairlifts at ski resorts and little dustings of the white stuff. It is September 17th!
I'm too tropical for this, Sean.
But look, this bad weather, time for you to get into four-wheel drive. You know it's got full-time four-wheel drive with available locking differentials? Ineos Grenadier. This car, the biggest head turner I've ever been in, ever driven personally myself. I'm encouraging you at least check it out. I know you're not overly familiar with the brand. You probably, like me, just saw the commercials on the Olympics and were like, wait, what is that? Is that a G-Wagon? Is that a Land Rover? No, it's an Ineos Grenadier. Available exclusively at Warner, 2400 South, 5600 West, at the Van Center. They've got full lineup, all the available packages, all the available colors. Set up a test drive today. Tell them OC sent you. All right, we just had Oklahoma State insider Jeff Johnson on. I really abused his time. I don't know why I do that to people, but I thought
that's unexcusable things, abusing people's time.
just telling someone, yeah, like give me like a 20-minute interview. 37 minutes later. All right, I got one more question.
And before I let you go, I got another one about
that. By the way, that's one of the verbal crutches I use. But before I let you go, last thing before I let you go, then I always do like three more.
I say, isn't there the rule of three? What you subscribe to?
It's not great. It's not an ideal situation for our guests, but here we are. Look, I asked him. I put him on the spot and said, "All right, who else?" Right now, the Big 12 has 12 Utah, 13 Kansas State, 14 Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State plays Utah and Kansas State back-to-back. This week, Utah on the road in Manhattan for Kansas State next week.
That's tough. That's tough.
That is, if you're Mike Gundy, if you're the athletic director at Oklahoma State, if you're the university president, and you're like, all right, conference realignment, we're doing this new thing, new schools, new look. And by the way, Oklahoma State deserves to be in a spot where, like, they've had success. They built it into a very respectable program. When Texas and Oklahoma leave, Kansas State gets to raise their hand in football, right? Kansas, obviously, in basketball. Oklahoma State gets to raise their hand in football and say, all right, guys, now put your marketing dollars behind us. Now set us up for some success. Like, they deserve that. And instead, what do they get? Here's your schedule. Bam! Just backhanded with that schedule. The visual for me is that they printed it out on a piece of cardstock, and they just walked it into Mike Gundy's office, and they said, hey, we want you to see your schedule before we make it public. And they just slapped him across the face with it. And he looked at it, and he's like, what? Why do you hate me in September?
The visual I have is he gets the cardstock across the desk. He looks at it, and then all you hear internally is unnecessary roughness, 15 yards.
He just pulls he's got the challenge flag.
It's right there.
He's got the actual flag. He's just throwing them in his office.
Yeah. And then he's
15
like,
yards!
don't you know who I am?
I'm a man!
That in itself, that sound bit, that in itself should have been like, all right, conference realignment,
Dude.
Texas, Oklahoma are gone, Oklahoma State. Nah, they didn't do any of that
They did no favors to Oklahoma State.
at all.
Like Mike Gundy, in that, you heard Jeff talking about how he gets a little bit short later on in the season, gets a little impatient. He must have pissed somebody off.
Oh, 100%.
He must have, like, made the wrong phone call to Brett Yormark, so Brett was just like, all right,
I remember that.
let's welcome Utah to the conference by giving their first conference contest at Stillwater. Oh, okay, great. We get them at home. That's a favor to us. Yes, and then the next weekend you'll be headed to take on Kansas State.
Manhattan. I will say I agree with Jeff where it does feel like the conference is being slighted a little bit.
Oh, it's very deliberate.
And number one, that's out of pocket. Number two, I mean, if Utah beats Oklahoma State and they go out and whether it's by the over-under, by the spread, however you want to look at it, but they go in there and they win the game and they don't go up at least 2 spots, I think you're going to have to swing on somebody, Sean.
Well, you do have to pay attention to what happens above them.
I agree.
But Yeah, I mean, look, these are high-stakes games, but the message has been sent to the Big 12 Conference, like, you guys get your place at the table, but it's probably going to be one place at the table. And if you want two, you got to do something special.
Yeah.
And if you want three, it's going to be because everyone else up here screwed up.
Or it's 3 special teams. Literally, there's no in-between.
And that's why this is where my worst nightmare comes in. I put Jeff on the spot, and I said, hey, who else besides these teams that are all playing this little mini round robin? And throw Arizona in there because Arizona got mollywopped by Kansas State last week, and they're going to be hungry to kind of reestablish themselves over these next couple of weeks. So that's Utah's test.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State and then Arizona. That's difficult. I'm not backing off that just because they got beat.
And then you got to go to Arizona State.
Also annoying.
Yeah.
And terrible. And that's after a bye week at least.
Yes.
So I said, who else? And he said, you know what? In the Big 12, it kind of doesn't matter. It's everyone else. And that's the problem. That was the problem with the Pac-12, and now it's the problem with the Big 12. And you just mentioned Arizona State. Yes, Arizona State is annoying. Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas State, they are not safe when they play teams like Kansas, who's looked actually pretty bad. They're not safe when they play teams that look like Arizona State. And that roster, you're like, that's going to be an easy game. Well, on paper it was, and on the field it hasn't been so far. So that's the worst nightmare for me. From a easy ride to a conference championship perspective, that's the worst nightmare.
So your worst. So you're in your feelings right now a little bit. However, if Utah beats Oklahoma State going into next week, let's say Arizona puts out a similar performance, how do you feel then?
You mean if Arizona State looks bad again this week?
Yeah, they get mollywopped again.
I don't even know who they're playing. Hold on.
You know why I'm asking you that, right?
No, I don't.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is if you're still if that's your worst nightmare, but if it's the same consistent performance, can you really say it's still your worst nightmare?
Okay, here's the problem. Guess who's got a bye this week?
Arizona.
Yeah.
So you're still in a nightmare scenario.
It's just not good. It's not. Arizona's got in a real nice spot right now, coming off that horrible loss.
Right.
I know they want to get the taste out of their mouth, but they've got the bye week to prepare for Utah, who's in a tough physical game this week.
Yeah.
And then they've got Texas Tech after that, and Texas Tech is the closest thing to a bye week right now that you can get. Like, Texas Tech has looked awful.
They're terrible. Terrible.
They have been a joke so far. But guess what? They've got the athletes that they'll probably pull off an upset somewhere this year.
Yeah.
Anyway. Big thanks to Jeff for confirming my fears and making my life more stressful.
You just got as gloomy as outside.
It's not snowing anywhere near me, all right?
It's cloudy, overcast, rainy, lightning.
All right, 10 minutes away from Jeff Schwartz joining me. I want to refresh the question I opened the show with. The most inexcusable malpractice or error you see in pro sports and high-level college sports. Alonzo's got his answer. I got mine. I want yours at 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports on Twitter. The thing that just makes you pull your hair out when you see it. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. All right, Jeff Schwartz going to join us here in 5 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show as we wrap up hour number 2. Just wanted to get some more input on my question of the day. The most unforgivable error made in pro sports or in college sports, which are effectively pro sports. Alonzo, you going to be triggered by this one?
Am I?
Coming in from my guy Taz.
Oh.
Flopping in soccer. Absolutely yes. Disgusting. You are playing the most popular sport on the planet, all right? Oftentimes as the most highly compensated professional athletes on the planet, and a stiff breeze knocks you over and makes you cry. Flopping in soccer is disgusting.
Flopping in general really tends to piss me off because there's sometimes, I will say there is sometimes where there is a strategic flop, right? And then there's other times where it's just an egregious flop.
Then there's like the Dylan Brooks flop.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the flop I think of that is now a famous meme often is when Neymar gets hit and then he's spinning over and over and over like that. It's like, bro, you don't need, that's unnecessary. But I actually, I'm not triggered by that because I agree with it. Because there's some, like, it's the one where it's like they bump chests and the guy falls over and he's grabbing his face like he's been punched in the mouth.
Yes. So good.
Yeah.
The acting sometimes is impressive.
It is.
But
Award-winning sometimes.
But most of the time, you're just like, how do you stand up and go look at yourself in the mirror? That's on television. We have 15 different angles of you crying over somebody accidentally brushing you with their pinky finger.
With your pinky finger.
How do you then get up and just be like, yeah, I'm a man. I'm
40.
By the way, you know who doesn't flop like that?
Who?
Female soccer players.
No, they don't. They're tough.
Like, well, how come that's not a big part of the international game?
That's a great point. That is a great point.
The women are just like, yeah, no one believes it. We don't want to look silly. We don't want to look weak.
For me, one of the most unexcusable things, and this is just having played baseball, is when guys don't run hard, even if it's an automatic out. That
Oh, the yogging to first base on the routine grounder.
I will absolutely bean my own teammate on principle for not running hard. Now, I mean, we talked about this when we went to the Bees game a few weeks ago, right? Like, that's inexcusable. Inexcusable. Oh, and the other thing, number 2, baseball related. If there's a ball in play and you don't call for it, and then you run into your teammate, that should be an automatic ejection because you're hurting your own teammate.
You want somebody ejected for not communicating.
100%. Like, hey, you jabroni. Like, say I got it.
What if you're the guy who ignores the I got it,
That's
and then
party foul.
you force the collision?
Also unexcusable.
Then you're ejecting that guy too?
Gone.
You just want everyone
gone.
You just want everyone tossed.
It's a block party. Yeah, we're just throwing everyone.
All right.
But the main one is the yogging. Like, I mean, I think often about when Bryce Harper softly ran from home to first and Jonathan Papelbon met him and gave him some wall-to-wall counseling in the dugout.
How about this one coming in from 0070? Wow, that's almost the same as our text line number.
It is.
0070 says, when a team gets a delay of game or calls a timeout after receiving the ball after a kickoff. Anytime there's a stoppage and then you also have to call the timeout or get the delay of game, it's just bad.
Yeah.
It's just bad coaching.
Bad everything.
Probably already been said since 0314, but pulling a Kalen Clay. Let's call it something else.
Yeah.
We got to get off that.
Dropping
the ball before the goal line. We know that Kalen Clay did it.
There's others.
The statute of limitations has expired. We don't have to refer to it as the Kalen Clay anymore. That's my bad for even reading it verbatim.
I am curious to hear what Jeff's unexcusable infraction is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Jeff is going to come up with something that totally surprises us.
Yeah, that's why I'm not even trying to guess.
All right. Keep them coming in, 877-353-0700 on the Dish Pros text line. Inexcusable errors, missteps, mistakes in pro and college sports. You just can't stand it when it happens. I started the show talking about free throws. You have to have like above a certain baseline percentage shooting free throws if you're a pro, and probably even a college player. You don't have to make them all, but please, you can't suck at free throws. It's something it's a craft you can hone. Jeff Schwartz joins us in 3 minutes to start hour number 3. Sean O'Connell Show on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. Final week of Salt Lake Bees baseball season. This week, text Bees to 33986 to win a pair of tickets to a Bees home game. This is the final homestand of Smith's Ballpark. Get your vouchers. Bees to 33986. Welcome to hour number 3 on the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in my longtime co-host, my friend, Jeff Schwartz. Talk a little college football, talk a little NFL. Hey, buddy.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Doing all right. All right, so the NFL weekend is complete. Great Monday Night Football game. If you were a Eagles fan, probably less great. But who committed the big error for the Eagles in your mind? Did Sirianni call the wrong play? Did Jalen Hurts, should he eat that ball, not throw it to Saquon? Saquon's the one who dropped the pass, obviously. But, you know, that was a cascading era of events that led to Falcons getting possession back and the 2-minute drive. Who made the biggest error?
I think there was errors all over for Philly in this game. I even go back, Sean, to the first drive of the game when they chose to go for it on 4th down instead of taking the 3 points. Look, you start the game with a good offensive drive. Like, just take the points. Take the points. Be happy with a touchdown. With 3 points early on. You were not. It wasn't a situation where even the numbers. I remember on the telecast them saying like, "Well, analytics says like, I don't know, maybe go for it." Take the 3 points there. Obviously, at the end of the game, it's easy to say that, but I felt that way in the moment and then at the end. So look, you got the play you wanted, and you ended up with the player that is highly paid at running back, whose job it is to catch the ball, right? I mean, the ball hit him in the hands. He catches the ball, Sean, and gets a first down, and the game is over. So you certainly can argue that even though it didn't work out, the play concept and the play call was correct. But when you dig a little deeper and you realize that Saquon Barkley has 16 drop passes since 2021, then you wonder, well, why is Saquon out there for that play, right? If he's the guy that can't catch the ball, then why don't you put it in Gainwell or someone else? Now, if you end up running the football and do the conservative route and take the 3 points, then you leave the Falcons with less time. Like, I'm sort of okay with the call. They got the guy was open, Sean.
Yeah.
He just dropped the pass. So, but the thing that frustrates me about the Eagles is that we always hear that the Eagles are like the smartest ones in the room, right? They do things in very efficiently and with analytics, and like they're smarter than all of us. They kind of keep making the same mistakes over and over again, right? I mean, every team sort of has these problems, but it feels like Philly, because we get told all the time how great they are at making sure they don't have these problems. Doesn't it feel like they sort of have these blown leads and end of game stuff happen all the time when we get told how much smarter they are than the rest of us?
I mean, I guess you could make that case with Philadelphia. The issue with that and the conversation around it, I guess, sparked a question for me that I put out for everyone on the show. The most inexcusable error, the thing that when you see it happen in pro sports or in high-level college sports, you're just like, no, that can never happen. There's a lot that fall into this category, but which one drives you the craziest?
Oh, man, there's so many of these. So I hate when it's 4th and short and a team rushes up to the line of scrimmage, Sean, to run inside zone from a shotgun. We all know, everyone in the stadium knows what you're about to do. You're running inside zone from shotgun. There's no surprise here. Stop doing that. You know what I'm talking about. That probably pisses you off too. Stop doing it.
Not
we
to
all
that
know
level
you're doing
of specificity, no, but yes, I love it.
We all know you're doing it. Something that, because I've watched more WNBA than I ever have in my life, they miss way too many layups. Enough missing layups.
Yeah.
If you have an open layup, you have to make it in basketball. That's one very specific thing that's bothered me a lot this year. What other football ones do I have? I don't have ones like gameplay that irritate me. Like, if I see an offensive lineman who's wearing a back flap on their shoulder pads, the only person who's allowed to do that is Trent Williams. Everyone else is not allowed to do that, Sean. I judge you harshly if you're an offensive lineman wearing a back flap.
You're straying into like pet peeve category instead of inexcusable error category, because that's not a gameplay mistake. That's just a fashion choice.
Okay, inside, fine. Gun, inside zone, 4th and 1, inexcusable mistake.
Okay, I love.
There
that.
we go.
Yeah,
I'm just airing all my grievances now about football.
Yeah, that we have a.
I have one more.
I
have one more for that. Okay, I think it's very clear now that on Hail Marys, you have to blitz the quarterback. You cannot let a quarterback in a Hail Mary situation, Sean, sit and in a 3-man rush and try to find a wide receiver. We saw it happen with the Chiefs. Again, the Bengals just sat in a 3-man rush and let Mahomes sort of work his way to find someone down the field to get that pass interference. How many times do we see that in a Hail Mary situation? I think that you have to, if you are there's the dog. The kids must be that you have to rush the quarterback like it's the last play of the game because you need to get him off his spot and make him uncomfortable throwing that Hail Mary.
I think that's actually a really good one that people don't talk about a lot, but I would love to know the analytic answer on like how often, even a Hail Mary, if a quarterback has 7-8 seconds before he has to get rid of the ball, how often you find an open man. I mean, that's backyard football, and it's impossible to cover for 8 seconds. Nobody could do it, even if you drop everyone back.
No, and so I think that's one of mine that I think we need to start talking about more often. It's these Hail Mary situations that you need to have you need to rush the quarterback like it's like the last play of the game or something.
All right, I like that actually. What's going on with my San Francisco 49ers? Everyone's got lower leg problems. They finally got Trent Williams back, and I thought that was going to solve every problem. And then you lose it. Inexcusable loss to the Vikings of all people.
Yeah, I think the Niners are sort of feels a little cursed this year, Sean, with the injuries so far, right? McCaffrey's out. Debo's out now. It seems obviously, what happened with Pearsall is unfortunate. But by the way, like getting shot in the chest and like the next day he was like at the facility, it's pretty. I mean, you put on a resume. It's pretty, hard to beat. Hard to beat that.
I mean, you tell me how that's like. You were in an NFL locker room. A guy gets shot in an attempted robbery, and next day he walks into the locker room and is just like, "What's up, Jeff?"
Oh,
he's a legend.
He's 100% legend. Absolutely. There's no other way. It's an absolute legend. And then you sort of add in, we saw in the preseason a little McCaffrey. I mean, not McCaffrey. Purdy was like just okay, right? He wasn't great in the preseason. He looked good in week 1, but I think the injuries are starting to just pile up a little bit, right? The Niners are a top-heavy team. They're a team that has a lot of talent at the top of the roster and not as much talent throughout the rest of the roster. And that's what happens when you pay a lot of players. You have a lot of good football players, right, as a Niners fan. But the depth, and I think this goes into a broader discussion about sort of the effects of the Trey Lance trade, Sean. You lost some draft picks that you could use for guys that could help your team play now. So I think all those reasons are why the Niners right now are struggling. But look, you play the Rams this weekend. The Rams, if you think injuries are a problem with the Niners, the Rams are more injured. Like the Rams are pretty beat up right now. You should win this weekend, and then you're back on track.
Are the Carolina Panthers the new New York Jets? I mean, they're benching Bryce Young, and they're giving the Ginger Ninja, Andy Dalton, the keys to the kingdom. We've seen what's happened with other quarterbacks that have left that locker room and have gone on to greater success elsewhere, including Sam Darnold, which who would have thought? Same thing with Baker Mayfield. Are the Carolina Panthers now the cursed franchise in your hometown?
I love how you mentioned them with the Jets because with the Panthers' loss this past weekend, they now have the most losses in the NFL since David Tepper bought the team, and with the Jets winning against the Titans, now the Jets are 31st. The Panthers are 32nd in wins during that time. So it's kind of funny you mentioned those teams together. Look, Dave Canales was brought in to sort of fix Bryce Young, and after 2 weeks, he decides that he's done with it. Not a great sign, in my opinion. And this guy's worked well with a bunch of quarterbacks so far. And obviously, look, he did not draft him, so there's no connection. There's no connection that he has with Bryce Young. So there's nothing in his mind about like, hey man, I got to keep him because he's gonna be good one day, and we draft him and we're invested in him. There's no investment, and you've been in these situations, and I know you've covered teams that sort of were in this spot where if you don't make a quarterback change, you lose the locker room, right? It's hard to walk into the locker room today and say to your offense, we're going back with Bryce Young when Andy Dalton is there, right? Like players know. We're the first to know, by the way, whether or not a player can play or not, obviously. And I think that's a big part of this too, is like he is brand new there. He wants to implement his culture and his sort of his vision for the offense. And you can't do that with Bryce Young running the show. So these are all the reasons why Bryce Young is gone, or not gone, but not starting anymore. And I think he won't be Panther much longer. Can he play better elsewhere? Certainly. I mean, Baker Mayfield has shown that ability. Sam Darnold, you mentioned, Alex Smith very famously, right? Played better when he got to Kansas City. Ryan Tannehill has done that over his career, playing in better places. So yeah, but I think this goes to sort of a bigger discussion about how quickly do you play young players. I think that quarterbacks, unless you're, and there are certainly special ones out there that, a lot of them, Sean, just, you need a little bit of time before they play. It's better for them to just wait and learn and sort of see the NFL before getting on the field. But the issue is that ownership gives coaches like 2 years to show results. If they don't show results within 2 years, they'll go find another coach. So a coach feels almost like obligated to play these young players before they're ready. So it's a whole sort of systematic problem where even now the quarterbacks, the young quarterbacks in this class, I'm a little surprised about Caleb Williams. I know we watched a lot of Caleb Williams, Sean. It's not been as good as I thought it would be early on. Jaden Daniels has looked okay. Bo Nix just can't throw the ball down the field at all. And Caleb Williams is a little disjointed. So, sometimes I think it's best if these guys just sort of like wait a little bit.
Well, Tom Brady just said that, right? I mean,
yeah, he's always said that, yeah.
The podcast where, again, it's making the rounds again. He's like, look, it's a tragedy to make these guys start as first-year quarterbacks in the NFL, and he cites the fact that he didn't have to do it, and obviously Aaron Rodgers didn't have to do it. Peyton Manning was terrible his first year.
Yeah.
So I think the growing pains are fine. You mentioned Caleb Williams, and he got beat up. He got 7 times he got smashed in that game. Is it as simple as he's got to get rid of the ball more quickly? What are the reasons in your mind that Caleb Williams is struggling like he is for the Bears?
Well, he looked really good in that opening drive, and so on the sort of the scripted part of the offense, he looked really comfortable. But when you have a young quarterback, it's so paramount to protect them inside out, and they're players. They lose their confidence pretty quickly, right? I mean, they're young. They really don't have anything to fall back on, right? They don't have anything where they sort of have the memory bank of, okay, well, this worked for me in the past. They don't have that. They haven't played in the NFL, and the Bears' interior offensive line, Sean, is really bad. And I think that really affects his play as games go on, because the more he gets hit, the more he starts thinking about getting hit, the more he starts worrying about getting hit. And the Bears just did not do a good enough job of surrounding him with enough talent in that interior offensive line to where he's comfortable. That's why I think he starts games better than ends games. You start feeling those hits and worrying about where hits are coming from. And sometimes the Bears' offensive line is getting beat so fast. So, he'll get better with more reps, and he'll get more comfortable playing in this situation where his offensive line isn't as good as maybe they thought it would be or actually is, Sean. But, yeah, I think those are all the reasons why it's a little bit slow start for him.
Jeff Schwartz is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Longtime NFL veteran. He's also a college football insider, so we're going to get to some college football discussion here in just a minute. I have kind of held off on this discussion. I was very curious to pick your brain about it, but Tua Tagovailoa, another concussion. They're stacking one on top of another. Everyone's got an opinion about what that means for his long-term future. You and I think, were on the radio together the last time Tua got knocked out and was in the fencer's pose and everything looked really scary. And we talked about, the way that different bodies react and the genetic interaction with being knocked out and concussions and post-concussion syndrome and CTE and all that stuff. He's a young man with a lot of money in the bank and an uncertain future. What's the right thing for the Dolphins and for Tua?
Look, first of all, it's his decision and his decision only. Let's make that clear, right? I mean, we can suggest things and talk about it, but in the end, he has to decide what to do for himself. I am honestly, Sean, a little surprised at how they're already talking about when he's cleared to come back to play, and seeing specialists and sort of figuring that part out. Because to me, I would take my time as long as possible to make the decision. I would not play the rest of the season if I was him. And I would have to think really hard about whether or not, the NFL is in my future. That's now at least 4 documented concussions and a 5th, obviously, that was undiagnosed a couple years ago on that game, right, Sean? So like he's had a lot of these, and at some point, it's how much is what is enough? What's enough to say, look, man, it's not safe for me to play football anymore? The players and the ownership groups have done a good job a better job, not good, but a better job of educating players and about the risks about playing football. So we're fully, I would say when I came to the NFL in 2008, I don't think that there was really any talk about head injuries, concussion safety and protocols and making sure that we know the effects. Now there is. So there's no excuse. Players know what they're getting into. And I just would hate to see it happen again. I mean, it feels likely to happen again, right, Sean? Like he's not going to avoid this the rest of his career. And what happens if you get a fifth concussion, a sixth concussion? At what point is it enough, man?
Well, that's why I'm talking to a former NFL player about it. And not because, look, the science is there and established that if you have concussions, you're more likely to get concussions after you recover from those concussions. Whatever it is in your brain, in the lining around your brain, your musculature, your nervous response, you're more likely to get concussed if you've already been concussed. So with each ensuing concussion, toss aside the cumulative effect of long-term brain damage and things like that, but it's more likely that it is going to happen again, and that the trigger and the impact is less and less and less each time. So even from just like the practical, I want to be as good of a football player as I can perspective, like if you're less attuned or less prepared to take impact with each one of these, then you eventually have to see like, all right, well, where is that threshold where it's just like I can't get hit at all or I'm going to feel like I'm concussed.
Yeah. So we've talked about this on our show about, and you know more about this than me, so I'm going to refer to you in a second, about sort of, the impacts that cause concussions, right? And sort of, and really not concussion, but like we've talked a lot about knockouts, right? Obviously. And, we joke, and I said, like, I've never been punched before. Would I get knocked out? And you said, well, I mean, maybe, but that, you have a strong neck and jaw, and that probably would help prevent you getting knocked out. And I think about Tua because Tua wasn't really hit hard in the head in that the one on Thursday night, right? I mean, yeah, he got, it was a routine tackle. Yeah, maybe his head hit Damar Hamlin's body, but it wasn't like the impactful back of the head trauma that we've seen him have in the past. And I thought about what you told me because it does feel like this is something that's just genetic to him, right, Sean? He doesn't have the whatever the body makeup to prevent concussions.
Yeah, and I've talked about that. We've talked about that. I think that some people are more fortunate, some people are less fortunate, that we haven't figured out the exact reasoning and the exact science. If doctors knew what you needed to do, like in terms of strengthening your neck or adjusting your diet or your sleep or whatever, if they knew what could guard you against concussions best, then everyone in the NFL would be doing it. Every combat sports athlete would be doing it. We wouldn't have to worry about head injuries. But instead, we're seeing a situation where Tua, and by the way, when it happens to Tua, the reason it, I think, is so jarring for all of us is we see him like he has that involuntary nervous response.
Yeah,
the fist clenching, the fencer's pose, that kind of thing, where other guys will get concussed and they kind of like wander off and end up on the sideline and they're shaking their head and they're blinking. And that's still a concussion. But with Tua, it's like the loss of consciousness and your muscles and your body freezing up in rigor mortis temporarily, and it just shows everyone like, oh, yeah, that is a really big deal. That's bad.
You're right because, sometimes players get lightly hit on the head and they have terrible concussions.
Yes.
Other times, Tua might, I don't know, I haven't seen any reports of it. He might have no symptoms. Like there are times players get concussions and we see it like a fencing pose like that, and they don't actually have many symptoms. I've had players on teams that come in on Saturday morning and say, hey, man, I have a concussion-like symptoms. I didn't have them all week. You never know. But you're right. The visceral reaction of seeing him on the ground like that is really hard for a lot of us to overcome, and I would feel uncomfortable of him getting back in. I felt this way, by the way, on a smaller scale. Like when Alex Smith went back in after his leg injury, Sean, I remember watching the game. They were playing the Rams. And I think Donald sacked him like the first play of the game, the first play he was in. And I was like, oh, like, buddy, don't go back in. Obviously, he played fine afterwards, and he was totally okay. But, like, I think sometimes we don't let, the grosser something is, the less we want to see it happen again, obviously.
All right, I know I got to let you go in here just like 5 minutes or so. Only half an hour with Jeff today, not a full hour with Jeff. That's fine. But
it's already 3:20. Okay, yeah, well, I didn't realize that's yeah.
I do want to pick your brain just a bit about college football. Your Ducks looked a lot better. Are they fine?
Yeah, I think we're fine. I actually have a Utah question for you very quickly because I'm going to preview this game all week on everything I do.
Okay.
Utah with Cam Rising. It's going to sound mean. I promise it won't. No big road wins. Is that a concern of yours?
What do you mean no big road wins?
What's the big road win with Cam Rising?
Cam Rising won at the Coliseum for the first time Utah beat USC in 100 years at the Coliseum.
USC wasn't good that year. They were 4-8 or something that season. I'm talking about like a ranked road win for Utah. When does it happen last?
Well, you put me on the spot, and I can't.
The answer USC last year technically is the answer.
Okay,
but USC wasn't very good last year. Otherwise, it's actually kind of surprising. I'm not going to lie. I was like kind of taken aback doing some research on like road wins for Utah. It's a little worrisome, buddy. I'm not going to lie. 'Cause I like Utah. I like Utah a lot.
They're 2-point favorites right now, right? I mean,
no, I think it's flipped.
Okay.
Oklahoma State's a 3-point favorite, I think.
The line had been vacillating back and forth, and we saw, or maybe different books, but it's like a pick 'em effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
That kind of surprised me. I'm not going to lie. I was because I'm trying to find ways to talk about this game and bet on this game, and I don't really have an opinion quite yet on who's going to win. I just was looking at Utah's just generally road victories because I think that's a way to look at it. It's a tough road environment to play Oklahoma State this weekend. I put nothing into last weekend. Last weekend's game is irrelevant to me. I know we were texting about the Utah defense. I don't care about last weekend at all. I mean, we saw so many teams struggle with lower level opponents, and the next week they play great. I'm not. Alabama struggled at South Florida, and then they just blew out Wisconsin. Like I'm not terribly concerned about a game where the quarterback didn't play. I just was curious about sort of the road thing, playing on the road, and the operation of having all of that happen for Utah this weekend.
Okay, now I'm going to be hunting for this. Now that you've put this on my radar,
I'm just. You can text me about it. I mean, you have my number, but I'm just saying, like, I just think it's something that's kind of interesting about this program over the last 3 years. Of course, we're not counting the 21 season, the early part of that season. That was there was 22 when Rising wasn't playing yet. Those games don't count.
That was 2021.
I don't count those games.
Yeah,
on the road,
Rising wasn't playing.
On the road, they do not have, to validate Jeff, no ranked opponent victories.
Ruh-roh.
Well, that's it. I'm an honest broker. I'm just bringing it up. It's kind of surprised me. I'm not going to lie.
That is interesting. It's something we're going to have to dive into a little bit deeper.
There you go. You have a whole week to talk about. I gave you multiple segments of radio.
You just gave me the entire show tomorrow. Thank you for that.
Thanks for making my job easier, Jeff.
Hey, man. I bring the treats every time I call. There you go.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Jeff Schwartz. How about that? Just the elephant in the room provided by Jeff Schwartz. We'll talk about it more. I really am going to do a lot more digging on this.
Well, so I had started doing, being a producer, allegedly, I had started doing a little bit of digging, and I, in hindsight, I should have done more because I really didn't think about the road component, if I'm completely honest with you. That's short-sighted on my part. False start. 5-yard penalty on me.
Yeah, the games that we say, hey, that was a big game. I mean, you won on the road in December of 2022 against USC, 47-24. That was a ranked USC team. That's the only one?
It appears to be so.
Woo!
And again, I kind of did what Jeff did. I didn't really take into account the beginning of that 21 season because that was, is his name escapes me currently. Charlie
Brewer?
Charlie Brewer, thank you. The Charlie Brewer era, and then obviously Cam took over. But yeah. I mean, at Arizona State, they were not ranked. At UCLA, they lost at the Rose Bowl. I remember that day. At Oregon, though, in that nail biter, So, yeah. They've been in close games, but just no victories.
Fair enough.
You look awfully concerned now.
No, it's fine. It's fun to hear, something that's outside of my thought process be brought back into the thought process. There is that 2022 USC Utah game. That one,
yeah,
that's a lone win over the ranked opponent on the road, which is, you wish you had more, but at least there's not 0.
Right. You have one out of, I think it's 5, if I'm seeing this correctly, or 6.
Okay. Yikes. All right. I want to talk a little bit more about the Tua Tagovailoa Miami Dolphins situation right now. We have not really taken a deep dive into the whole concussion thing. Look, I spent a lot of time in the combat sports world. I know it's not the same as football, but I played a lot of years of football as well. I think I have a unique perspective on this, and probably a unique thought on Tua and his decision-making going forward. We'll get into that on the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Flag on me, 5-yard penalty. USC was listed as the home team in a Pac-12 championship game. That was not actually a road game for Utah. That was just a neutral site Pac-12 championship game. Yeah, flag on me. Should have been clued in on the old December 3rd date. So
weren't you there?
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Yeah, look. It's one of those things where there's a disconnect between what you're reading and what your brain thinks, right? So I'm just reading. I'm just going through the resume and saying, like, oh, yeah, look, there's a win over a ranked USC team. USC is the home team here. And it's like, oh, wait, no. Obviously, the ranked Oregon team that you beat was in a Pac-12 championship game.
Correct.
Ranked
neutral
USC
site
team,
game.
Those are neutral site games. They don't count as road games.
And if you really think about it, kind of a home game for both of those games.
Yeah, exactly. Rice Eccles South at Allegiant, both times. All right. Marching closer to the end of the Sean O'Connell Show here on a Tuesday, the Tua Tagovailoa conversation that is happening in 3 different arenas right now. The medical arena, where they're talking with specialists and neurologists and concussion doctors, and they're saying, all right, this is the prognosis moving forward. This is what can happen. The competitive arena, where they're saying, all right, Tua Tagovailoa is going to be out for, we'll figure out how long. What do you need to do to try and win football games? The Dolphins have high hopes this year. And so Tyler Huntley gets signed by the Dolphins to be the backup, at least for now. Snoop on the roster in Miami. He's carved out a really nice little niche for himself in the NFL. We should all be happy about that. And then, you got to talk about it on the personal level for Tua Tagovailoa, who is 5 years in the NFL, has had 5 concussions if you go back to his time at Alabama. And look, there's something wrong with the way that his body absorbs impact. But also, and Jeff touched on this at the end of the conversation we just had with him, he mentioned the symptoms thing. Tua does not have, or at least the last time he got knocked out, the really ugly one, where his head bounced off the turf, he does not have the same type of chronic concussion, post-concussion symptoms that other people have. He's lucid pretty quickly, even after losing consciousness. He doesn't have light sensitivity, according to him. He doesn't have speech problems, according to him. He doesn't have balance or equilibrium issues, according to the tests and the team. He passes the post-concussion protocol tests, Alonso, all of you out there listening. He passes them. There's a protocol. There's a system now in place for a college player. They do it in high schools now. They do it in the pros, certainly. In the pros, they have a neurologist that evaluates the hit, that evaluates the reaction to the hit, and they have to go through these like post-concussion tests. You have to do like I can touch my nose, I can walk the line, the field sobriety kind of thing. He passes those. I think Tua Tagovailoa is in the perfect intersection of terrible, terrible health for himself, and I'll tell you why. When it comes to the impacts, his head is sensitive to impact, and he loses consciousness, and he is concussed more easily because of the accumulated injury, and probably, maybe, more easily even than other people that are his same size, strength, etc. Okay? And the reason I say that he's at this terrible intersection is because he's also in a situation where his body recovers better from concussion and from loss of consciousness than the average person's does. And certainly than other people that are in his comparable situation. I can't tell you how many people I've seen get knocked out. Hundreds.
Have you ever had a concussion?
Well, yes, because if you get knocked unconscious, medically it's a concussion. I got knocked unconscious badly twice in my mixed martial arts career, and the third time that counted as a knockout wasn't a bad knockout. It was a flash knockout. I did not have negative reactions, adverse effects long term. Lucky enough, knock on wood. I've been very, very fortunate in that regard. When I see how Tua speaks to the media and speaks to his coaching staff after these things happen, I say, I know why he's doing that. Because he feels fine. I really believe it. Tua feels fine. Tua feels like I could go back out there and play football. I've been knocked out. I was unconscious. I got knocked out on a regional fight. I can't remember the year, 2008. I was unconscious for like 90 seconds. That's a long time to be out. It took me a little while to get all the way back. Like, I really fully woke up when they were cutting the tape off my hands in the locker room. I'd already walked, sat down, talked to the doctors, walked again, up the escalator into the locker room area. This was at the Salt Palace. And I really woke up and have continuous consciousness and memory, whatever it was, 15 minutes later, okay? I had no headache. I had no dizziness. I had no light sensitivity. I had no issue beyond those 15 minutes of my life are gone. I don't know what happened.
Which, that's a crazy thing. Like, you hear stories about that stuff, like, even like pro wrestlers, where they're like, yo, I wrestled this match after I bumped my head. I don't remember anything.
Yeah, see, that's crazy. I lost my UFC debut by pretty nasty knockout. Embarrassing, but that's all it hurt my pride, nothing else. I was fine. I still am fine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have headaches. I don't have balance problems. That's why Tua is in this really terrible, terrible spot. He's like the Venn diagram of I'm easy to concuss, but also I recover nicely from concussions is actually the worst possible scenario for Tua. Because what does it mean? It means he gets knocked out, he gets concussed, and then he feels fine, and he wants to get back onto a football field as rapidly as possible. And he probably isn't even considering retirement seriously.
No, it sounds like he, at least what some reporting has said, is that he intends to keep playing. I agree with Jeff that he should at least take the rest of the season off and think through it. But at the end of the day, there's only one guy that can make that decision.
Yeah. And you know what? It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because we have no idea the difference it's making for him long term.
No, we won't know.
We have no idea. I don't know what the real answer is because you're right. It's his decision to make. I do know that when you're in your 20s and you are equipped with expert knowledge from around the world, the highest ranked, most respected specialists in the field, all are going to weigh in and all are available for you to discuss this with. Tua Tagovailoa needs to go through and explore every single possible avenue, best case and worst case scenarios for him. The best case scenario, Alonzo, is, and this is scary. The best case scenario is he goes back, he plays, and it takes 5 more years before he gets another concussion. But there is no scenario in which he doesn't get another concussion.
No, I mean that hit with Damar Hamlin, all ironic as it was, wasn't that brutal of a hit. So it's inevitable. It really is. And he's a mobile quarterback. So it's 100% inevitable.
The best case scenario is you play out this contract, this $200+ million contract, you cash all those checks, and then towards the end of it, you get concussed again. The best case scenario for Tua Tagovailoa is the largest window plays out before it happens again. There is no scenario in which there's not another concussion. He has to retire. I saw Manti Te'o, who I'm a huge fan of and was before the documentary and everything. I saw Manti Te'o, who's close with the Tagovailoa family, crying on TV, thinking about his little brother, his little cousin, having long-term health effects. Because Manti's on the other side. He knows how important football was to his life. He knows what it took away from him when he lost the game, but he also knows what it's like on the other side now. He's doing great jobs. He's got a family. He's got a beautiful wife. He's living the life that this career allows them to pay for and allows them to provide so successfully for. But that's what matters.
Well, and Mike McDaniel said it best. Hey, it's time for you to go home and quarterback your family.
Dude.
That hit home.
I mean, I have no like dog in the fight here. I've never been an Alabama fan. I'm not a Dolphins fan. I have no reason to dislike Tua. He seems like he's great. He seems like his family's great. You can't risk the brain thing. We know too much about it now. Like if you're driving around right now smoking cigarettes while you listen to this show, we know too much about that now. Stop. Okay? My grandparents used to smoke. They didn't know back then what we know now. You're probably driving around smoking that cigarette saying this Tua kid needs to retire because his brain. Yeah, you're right. When you have all the knowledge that we have, you got to stop. And I don't want to be the one that, like, I would hate to draw the short straw and be the one that has to convince him to do that. Because, gosh, how impossible was it? Hey, your whole identity, your whole career, this thing you worked so hard for, we're gonna see that taken away from you by stuff pretty much beyond your control. Just bad health, bad luck. Tua, you already won the lottery, dude. You did. You already won it. You can go coach. You're respected. You're loved. There is the best case scenario ends with you getting a concussion. The worst case scenario ends with you getting a concussion that alters your lifestyle permanently. We know too much about it now. The only person who can make this decision is Tua. We have to find a way to fix that. The NFL should force retirements on players that are 3 concussions in a certain amount of time.
Well, and that was actually one question I wanted to pose to Jeff is like, there's all these protocols. Is there a protocol in place at the league level where they can step in and say, hey,
look, the answer to that is no, as long as he can pass the tests.
The protocols.
The post-concussion protocol, as long as he can pass it, they have to, like, legally, that's the barrier. That's the hurdle he has to overcome. And he can. Again, and my theory is it's because he heals better, his body reacts better than most post-concussion. But the concussion does happen.
Right. In real time. I mean, we've all seen it.
And it's scary, dude.
Yeah, it is. It's never, I mean, I've obviously played football. When you see guys go down and then you see a guy immediately take his helmet off and take a knee.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's bad. It's bad.
And it's, by the way, it's like a reminder of your mortality that, as callous as this is, that other football players don't want. Nobody wants to see Tua lying stiff on the ground and then like the little shake as he's waking up and you hate it.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
As a fighter, like, it's one of the worst things when you see this happen to somebody because it reminds you it could happen to you also.
Like, I think of that knockout between Jorge Masvidal and Ben Askren.
Yeah.
That was a nasty knockout.
It was horrible.
And, I mean, essentially it was the same thing, right? But then you ask Ben about it after. I don't know what you're talking about. Lights went out.
Lost his time.
Yeah.
Lost his moments. And look, Ben has recovered nicely.
He has.
And that is fortunate, but it's also unfortunate for somebody like Tua because the easy recovery probably leads you to de-emphasize how serious the effects are.
Well, and the reason I ask about the league component, because I think about, like, you hear these stories of guys down the road, and then some of them are horrible stories, right? Like, you think of Junior Seau.
Junior Seau is the easiest one here.
And it's such a horrible story.
It's tragic.
And you never would have guessed, right? And so that's why at some point the league, in my opinion, for all the adjudication they want on so many other facets, this is one where I think they should interject and say, hey, listen, we know we're $1 billion business. Money, they're not losing money if Tua steps away because there's insurance that's going to mitigate that anyway.
And by the way, like I know the money people, it's like it feels callous to mention money in these situations, but money does matter.
100%.
Like Tua is fine though. Tua's set. Tua's family is set. Like Tua can't make the case to anyone who loves him. I need to do this to provide for you all.
He'll be fine.
They're like, no, dude. Like, you made $75 million already. Okay, but also your brother's making money. Like, mom and dad are making money. We're fine. What we want is you remembering your name, your wife's name, your children's name, my name. What we want is the person that you are to still exist in 10 years. Because head injuries, that's the threat. They take away who you are. Your brain is who you are. Your brain is your personality. Your brain is what people know about you and what people talk to. He's got to protect it.
Well, I mean, we even talked about it with some football folks. Like, if he were to retire, it's not even going to affect the team, like from like a cap standpoint and things like that, because it's a medical retirement.
That's right.
So it's one of those where it's like, I get it. He's a competitor at a high level. But for me, at least, I mean, if I was in his position, I'd be like, nah, I want to stay as I am to be the dude I am for my people. But again, I'm not Tua Tagovailoa.
Also, if he was 36 years old, the announcement would have been made already.
100%. It's over. It's a wrap.
In your 20s, you still feel invincible, even when there's video evidence of how not invincible you are.
And that's where you were talking about the human element. That's where we as humans get arrogant and think that, oh, I mean, you were 25 once.
Yeah.
You thought you could jump off this building that we're sitting in.
Guess
right
what? I got my ass knocked out at 26 years old and still just like, I'm fine. And thankfully, and I truly am grateful for this, thankfully I am fine. And I got out at the right time. I was fortunate enough to have a good opportunity to make some money and get out and work in broadcasting. And Tua has those opportunities.
Oh, he would be great. He's eloquent. Would be great on TV.
There's no chance Tua is on the unemployment line if he decides to retire from this medical.
No, I bet you even the Dolphins would hire him immediately.
Tua, I know you're a loyal listener to the show. You have to retire.
Also, Manti Te'o, if you're listening, I sent you an email. Please respond.
Yeah, Manti, come on, dude. I have the navy and the green 5 jerseys in my closet.
Of course you do. Wait, Kendall didn't throw them out?
They're hidden.
Oh.
You know those the suit, like the suit hangers with you got like the suit bag?
Oh, yeah. Well done.
There you go.
Well done.
All right, way over time. Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up next on ESPN 700. Breaking Benjamin and Stain are coming to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater October 5th. You can listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts all week for your chance to win tickets to that show. I have Disney on Ice tickets for you. November 7th through the 10th at the Delta Center, 877-353-0700. If you can answer this question. Sparked a conversation for us today. Saquon Barkley, since 2021, has dropped how many passes as an NFL running back? 877-353-0700. Disney on Ice tickets. And if you're a Disney adult, on this show, you are seen and you are supported.
I like that you're doing that with Spence on remote. Well done.
Spence is listening right now, just internally raging. Disney adults.
I think what we should do is we should do an ESPN 700 Olympics, and some of that eventage stuff should include Disney-related consumption of Disney propaganda.
I would win that event very easily.
I know you would. I mean, as you know, I don't watch very many movies, so I'm already going to be last there.
Your kids have aged out of a lot of the Disney properties anyway.
Well, the oldest still watches Stitch pretty heavily, as you know, but that's about where my
and the Cowboys and what you should expect if you're taking that trip to Stillwater with Jeff Johnson at OK State Rivals. If you want to give him a follow on Twitter, and of course to Kyle Whittingham, head coach of the Utes, who joined us at the top of the show today. Tomorrow, big one. Tony Parks is going to join us. We've got we don't know who yet, but somebody from RSL. We're efforting a Utah player as well, and Coordinator's Corner with Andy Ludwig. It was Morgan Scalley last week. Right off the top of the show, it'll be offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig taking this team to Stillwater. So, fun show lined up already for you tomorrow. Alonzo, well done today.
You know, every day is the Super Bowl, so we try to come out here and do the thing, even if we hate Disney.
Where's Spence at today?
Hold on.
Spence Checketts is on remote with the Drive today. I'm sure they'll have some prizes, some giveaways, some fun, some deals for you to participate in.
Belliston Jewelry in Ogden.
Ooh, go get fancy with some jewelry in Ogden. O-Town, stand up. Been too long. They haven't sent us up there.
No. Where was the last? Well, we went to Beer Bar.
That's right.
Maybe while you're up there, Spence, see if they have a bedazzled Mickey Mouse pendant that you can rock on a chain.
We should get Spence. Christmas is coming up. We should get him a bunch of Disney stuff so he feels obligated to wear it.
Some Disney jammies.
Perfect. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's all for the Sean O'Connell Show. That was fun. Let's do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700.